Tonight, we journey into the quiet expanse of a life that shaped the very soundscape of a century. We will trace the intricate patterns woven by Edward Kennedy Ellington, known universally as Duke. His was a presence that extended far beyond the stage, a creative force that permeated the fabric of American culture and resonated across the globe. This is not merely the chronicle of a musician, but an exploration of an artistic architect whose compositions became the very language of an era. As the hours unfold, we shall gently traverse the landscape of his existence, from the quiet streets of Washington, D.C., where his journey began, through the vibrant, often tumultuous decades of the 20th century. We will observe the careful cultivation of his craft, the subtle evolution of his style, and the profound impact of his ceaseless innovation. His story is one of persistent dedication, of an unwavering commitment to musical expression that transcended fleeting trends and superficial boundaries. Duke Ellington's influence was not a sudden burst, but a steady, pervasive emanation. He did not merely play music, he composed entire sound worlds, leading an orchestra that became an extension of his own vast imagination. His melodies, harmonies, and rhythms became synonymous with an entire genre, yet his work consistently defied easy categorization. It was a tapestry rich with diverse threads, reflecting the complex beauty and challenges of his time. Tonight, as the world outside quiets, we invite you to settle into a space of calm reflection. Allow the gentle current of this narrative to carry you through the quiet corridors of history. There is no urgency here, only the steady unfolding of a remarkable life, a life lived in devotion to art and an enduring quest for beauty. We will explore the depths of his genius, the breadth of his vision, and the quiet yet monumental legacy he left behind. Take a breath, and let the story of Duke Ellington begin to softly unfold around you. The year 1899 marked a distinct moment in time for Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. It was a city of contrasts, where grand federal buildings stood in quiet testament to national aspirations, yet societal divisions were deeply ingrained. For the black community, D.C. represented a unique environment, often described as a city of aspiration, a place where a burgeoning middle class was steadily taking root and striving for advancement. This was not the Deep South, with its overt and often violent subjugation, nor was it the booming industrial North. Instead, Washington, D.C. possessed a particular character, shaped by the presence of federal employment opportunities and a concentration of educational institutions for African Americans. Howard University, a beacon of intellectual pursuit, stood as a testament to the community's commitment to higher learning and professional development. Many black families in the city could trace their lineage to individuals who had gained freedom before the Civil War, or who had migrated there in its aftermath, seeking refuge and opportunity. Within this environment, a distinct social stratum emerged. There were doctors, lawyers, educators, and proprietors of small businesses, all contributing to a vibrant, self-sustaining community. They built churches, established social clubs, and fostered an atmosphere where refinement and self-improvement were highly valued. Homes were often meticulously kept, reflecting a pride in ownership and a desire to present an image of respectability and accomplishment. Children were encouraged to pursue education, to cultivate good manners, and to aspire to professional careers. Yet, beneath this surface of burgeoning prosperity and cultural richness, the pervasive reality of racial segregation remained an undeniable fact of daily life. Despite the presence of a strong black middle class, the city's public spaces, its schools, its transportation systems, and many of its commercial establishments operated under the strictures of Jim Crow, and opportunities for advancement while present were still circumscribed by the colour line. The pursuit of dignity and equality was a constant underlying current in the lives of many. It was into this intricate social landscape, a place of both quiet promise and persistent limitation, that Edward Kennedy Ellington was born on April 29th, 1899. His early world was defined by the aspirations of his family and community, tempered by the immutable realities of a segregated society. This dual experience of striving within constraints would subtly inform his worldview and, in time, his artistic expression. He would come to understand the nuances of this world, observing both its elegance and its inherent injustices, absorbing them into the quiet crucible of his developing consciousness. Edward Kennedy Ellington entered the world on April 29th, 1899 in Washington, D.C., a city that, as we have explored, was a mosaic of emerging black aspiration and persistent societal constraints. His arrival was into a home characterized by stability, love, and a quiet sense of purpose. His parents, James Edward Ellington and Daisy Kennedy Ellington, provided an environment that was both nurturing and aspirational, laying a foundational layer of security that would remain with him throughout his life. James Edward Ellington, often simply known as J.E., was a man of diverse talents and considerable charm. He worked as a butler, a blueprint maker for the US Navy, and also found employment as a caterer. His entrepreneurial spirit was evident. He often took on additional jobs, ensuring a comfortable living for his family. J.E. possessed a dignified bearing and a strong sense of self-respect. He was known for his elegant dress, his smooth demeanour, and his ability to navigate various social circles with ease. These qualities, observed by his young son, would later resonate in Edward's own public persona. J.E. fostered an atmosphere of confidence and encouraged his son to believe in his own capabilities, instilling a quiet assurance that would serve him well. Daisy Kennedy Ellington, Edward's mother, was the heart of the home, a woman of grace, warmth, and deep devotion. Her focus was primarily on her family, and she created a sanctuary of comfort and affection. Daisy doted on her son, perhaps to a degree that might be considered indulgent, yet it was an indulgence rooted in profound love and a desire to see him flourish. She instilled in him a strong sense of personal value and a belief in his own unique qualities. Her gentle guidance and unwavering support provided a secure emotional bedrock. It was Daisy who encouraged his early forays into artistic expression, fostering a sense of curiosity and appreciation for beauty. The Ellington home was not opulent, but it was always well kept, reflecting the family's pride and their position within the black middle class. Meals were regular, clothing was neat, and there was an emphasis on proper deportment and polite conversation. Education was valued, and the parents held quiet aspirations for their son. They envisioned a future for him that included a good education, a respectable profession, and a life free from the harshest indignities of racial prejudice. While they did not foresee his eventual path as a world-renowned musician, they certainly cultivated the environment in which such a talent could gently unfurl. This stable, supportive, and loving home provided young Edward Kennedy Ellington with a profound sense of security and self-worth. It was a place where he was cherished, where his potential was recognized, and where he was encouraged to explore the world with curiosity and confidence. This early comfort and affirmation would become a quiet strength, a steady anchor as he embarked on a life that would take him far beyond the quiet streets of Washington, D.C. From his earliest years, Edward Kennedy Ellington exhibited a certain bearing, a natural elegance that set him apart. It was this innate grace, combined with the deliberate cultivation of his parents, that eventually earned him the enduring nickname Duke. This moniker was not a self-proclaimed title, but rather one bestowed upon him by his childhood friends, a testament to how his refined demeanour was perceived even in his youth. His father, James Edward Ellington, a man of quiet dignity and impeccable dress, served as an early model. J.E. took pride in his appearance, always presenting himself with a polished formality, whether in his professional life or within the community. He instilled in young Edward the importance of presentation, of carrying oneself with confidence and self-respect. This was not about ostentation, but about an inner assurance reflected outwardly. Edward absorbed these lessons, observing his father's smooth interactions and his effortless ability to command a room with a calm presence. And Daisy Kennedy Ellington, his devoted mother, further reinforced this sense of specialness. Her unwavering love and constant affirmation nurtured a deep-seated self-worth in her son. She treated him with a certain deference, as if he were already destined for greatness, fostering a belief in his own unique value. This maternal adoration, far from creating an arrogant individual, instead built a quiet reservoir of confidence and a natural inclination towards refined behaviour. As a young boy, Edward was known for his neat attire, his polite manners, and a certain poised detachment from the boisterous rough and tumble of other children. He preferred games that involved imagination and creativity, often displaying an early interest in art and drawing. While not aloof, he possessed an air of quiet observation, and taking in the world around him with a discerning eye. His friends noticed this distinct quality, this unforced nobility in his bearing. It was his friend Edgar McKentry who, noting Edward's sartorial choices and his generally sophisticated air, began calling him Duke. The name quickly caught on, becoming an inseparable part of his identity. This nickname, bestowed in childhood, was more than just a playful identifier. It was an early recognition of the persona that would define him throughout his life. It spoke to his inherent dignity, his cultivated charm, and his natural leadership qualities. The Duke was not merely a performer, he was a figure of elegance, a maestro whose presence commanded respect and admiration. This early acknowledgement of his sophisticated persona, nurtured by his parents and recognized by his peers, laid a crucial foundation for the iconic figure he would become, a man whose very name evoked a sense of class, artistry, and timeless grace. The early soundscape of Edward Ellington's life was rich with melody, an intricate tapestry woven from the threads of his home and the broader Washington, D.C. community. Music was not a distant concept, but an ever-present force, shaping his auditory world from a very tender age. Within the comfortable confines of his family home, the piano held a central position, both physically and emotionally. His mother, Daisy Kennedy Ellington, possessed a gentle touch on the keys. Though not a professional musician, her playing filled the house with hymns, popular songs of the day, and simple melodies. These sounds were among Edward's earliest musical memories, a soothing backdrop to his childhood. He would often sit near her, absorbing the vibrations, the harmonies, and the rhythms, even before he fully understood their complexity. This constant exposure cultivated an inherent connection to the instrument, making it a familiar and inviting presence rather than an intimidating one. The piano was not merely furniture, it was a source of comfort, joy, and familial expression. Beyond the domestic sphere, the streets of Washington, D.C. pulsed with a different, more vibrant energy. The early 20th century saw the widespread popularity of ragtime, a syncopated musical style that was then sweeping across America. D.C., with its thriving black middle class and numerous social gatherings, was a fertile ground for this lively new sound. Parlours, dance halls, and even street corners echoed with the distinctive rhythms of ragtime piano. Edward would have encountered this music everywhere, from neighbourhood parties to the local ice cream parlour, its energetic bounce becoming an undeniable part of the city's sonic identity. This environment of pervasive music fostered a natural curiosity in young Edward. He was not merely a passive listener, he was an observer, absorbing the nuances of different styles. The formal beauty of his mother's playing contrasted with the spontaneous exuberance of the ragtime heard on the streets. Both contributed to his developing musical sensibility. The community itself was a hub of cultural activity. Churches offered gospel music, social clubs hosted dances with live bands, and theatres showcased various forms of entertainment. These experiences were invaluable, providing a broad palette of sounds and an understanding of music's role in social life. The confluence of his mother's gentle piano, the infectious rhythms of ragtime permeating the city, and the general atmosphere of cultural engagement within his community slowly but surely ignited a spark within Edward. These early, almost subconscious influences laid the groundwork for his burgeoning interest in music. They demonstrated music's power to soothe, to excite, and to connect people, gradually drawing him closer to the very art form that would ultimately define his extraordinary life. While the sounds of music permeated Edward Ellington's early existence, his formal education followed a more conventional path, though his academic inclinations did not always align with traditional expectations. His schooling began in the public system of Washington, D.C., a city that, despite segregation, offered comparatively robust educational opportunities for its black citizens. Yet, young Edward was not, by many accounts, a particularly diligent student in the conventional sense. His interests often lay beyond the confines of standard curricula. Instead, a different form of expression began to manifest itself early on, a distinct talent for visual art. Even as a child, Edward showed a remarkable aptitude for drawing and painting. He possessed an eye for detail and an innate ability to translate what he observed into visual form. This artistic bent was encouraged, and it became an important outlet for his creativity during his formative years. He would sketch, doodle, and engage with colours and forms, though finding a quiet satisfaction in these endeavours. This nascent artistic talent led him to attend the Armstrong Manual Training School, a prominent institution in D.C. that offered vocational and technical training alongside academic subjects. At Armstrong, Edward could further cultivate his drawing skills. The school's curriculum was designed to equip students with practical skills for various trades, and for a time, Edward envisioned a future that lay outside the realm of music. His artistic pursuits suggested a possible career in commercial art or design. He even received a scholarship offer to study art at the Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, New York, a testament to the seriousness with which he considered this path. During these years, the idea of becoming a professional musician was not his primary aspiration. Music was still more of a pervasive atmosphere, a background hum, or a recreational activity. His energies and ambitions at this juncture were directed towards visual artistry. The discipline of drawing, the composition of images, and the application of colour provided a creative outlet that felt distinct and promising. This period in his life offers a glimpse into a potential alternative trajectory for Edward Ellington, one where his name might have been associated with canvases and palettes, rather than with orchestras and compositions. It underscores the breadth of his creative spirit even before music fully claimed his profound attention. Despite the musical atmosphere that permeated the Ellington household, Edward's initial foray into formal piano instruction was met with a notable lack of enthusiasm. At the age of 7, his parents arranged for him to begin lessons with a local teacher, Marietta Clinkscales. This was a common practice for middle-class families in Washington, D.C., who viewed piano instruction as a mark of cultural refinement and a valuable skill. However, for young Edward, these lessons felt more like an obligation than an opportunity. The structured approach of Mrs. Clinkscales, with its emphasis on scales, exercises, and the proper reading of sheet music, did not immediately resonate with the spirited child. The piano, which had previously been a source of background warmth from his mother's playing, now became an instrument of disciplined practice, a task rather than a joy. He found the drills tedious and the necessity of adhering to written compositions restrictive. His mind, at this age, was more inclined towards the freedom and physical activity of outdoor pursuits. Indeed, Edward's true passion during these early years lay not in the intricate patterns of a musical score, but on the baseball field. He was a keen and energetic player, drawn to the camaraderie, the competition, and the simple exhilaration of the game. The crack of the bat, the thud of a ball in a glove, and the shouts of his playmates held far more appeal than the measured tones emanating from the piano. Time spent practicing baseball was time well spent in his young estimation, while piano practice often felt like an interruption to more engaging activities. His mother Daisy would often have to coax him, and sometimes even physically lead him, to the piano for his lessons and daily practice sessions. His reluctance was evident, and his mind would frequently wander from the keys to the imagined plays on the diamond. The discipline required for musical mastery seemed at odds with his youthful desire for unbridled play. This early resistance to formal instruction highlights that his eventual musical genius was not an immediate, self-evident path, but rather a cultivated passion that would blossom later. The initial lessons with Marietta clink scales were foundational, yet they did not ignite an immediate spark. They merely laid dormant the seeds of what would one day become a profound connection to the instrument, a connection that would reshape the landscape of American music. The initial resistance to the piano that marked Edward Ellington's early childhood gradually began to recede as he transitioned into his teenage years. A subtle, yet profound, shift in perspective occurred, transforming his relationship with music from one of obligation to one of fascination. This transformation was not a sudden explosion of interest, but rather a slow dawning, influenced by the vibrant musical landscape of Washington, D.C., and the evolving social dynamics of his adolescence. The streets and social gatherings of his city pulsated with the energetic rhythms of ragtime. Unlike the structured classical pieces of his early lessons, ragtime was a music of improvisation, syncopation, and immediate appeal. It was a sound that invited participation, that spoke to the spirit of the age, and that resonated deeply within the black community. Young Edward, now more aware of the world beyond the baseball diamond, began to notice the profound effect that skilled pianists had on their audiences. He observed how these musicians commanded attention, how they animated rooms, and how their music facilitated connection and joy. He started frequenting local establishments where ragtime pianists held court, absorbing their techniques and their stage presence. Figures like Louis Thomas, a local legend, and James P. Johnson, whose recordings would later reach Washington, presented a form of piano playing that was exciting, expressive, and undeniably cool. Edward began to see the piano not as an instrument of solitary practice, but as a powerful tool for social engagement. It offered a means to connect with others, to express oneself in a dynamic way, and to become a central figure in social gatherings. This realization marked the true genesis of his musical passion, the desire to play like these master pianists, and as to evoke similar responses from an audience became a compelling motivator. He understood that music was a language, a form of communication that transcended mere notes on a page. It was a vehicle for personality, for charm, and for creating an atmosphere. The initial reluctance gave way to a burgeoning curiosity, which in turn transformed into a dedicated pursuit. The piano was no longer a chore. It was a gateway to a world of expression and social interaction that profoundly appealed to his evolving sense of self. The seeds planted by his early lessons, once dormant, began to sprout, nourished by the intoxicating sounds of ragtime and the potent allure of its social power. With his newfound fascination for the piano, Edward Ellington began to immerse himself in the practicalities of musical performance within Washington, D.C. This bustling social scene, his education was not primarily through formal instruction, but through direct engagement with the music itself and the musicians who created it. He became a fixture at local gatherings, diligently observing the techniques of established pianists, absorbing their harmonic ideas, and studying their rhythmic intricacies. This self-taught approach, driven by an insatiable curiosity and a keen ear, formed the bedrock of his developing artistry. His first engagements were modest, often playing at house parties, small social functions, and neighbourhood dances. These early gigs were essential laboratories for his burgeoning talent. In these intimate settings, he learned the subtle art of accompanying dancers, of setting a mood and of responding to the energy of the room. He developed a remarkable ability to play by ear, quickly picking up melodies and harmonies and adapting them to suit the moment. This period was characterized by a constant process of listening, imitating, and ultimately innovating. Ellington's reputation as a talented young pianist began to spread through the community. He was known for his elegant touch, his increasingly sophisticated harmonies, and his charming demeanour, which earned him the moniker Duke from childhood. These early experiences provided invaluable lessons in the practicalities of a musician's life: how to engage an audience, how to maintain stamina through a long evening, and how to collaborate with other musicians, even if informally. It was during this formative time that Ellington also began to experiment with his own musical ideas. The act of performing frequently, of interpreting existing pieces, naturally led to a desire to create. His first compositions emerged from these practical settings, often short pieces designed for specific moments or moods at a party. One of his earliest known compositions, Soda Fountain Rag, reportedly written around 1914, showcased his early command of ragtime syncopation and melodic invention. Though never formally copyrighted, this piece illustrated his innate ability to craft engaging musical narratives. These initial forays into composition were not grand statements, but rather functional pieces, born out of the immediate needs of performance. They were playful, rhythmic, and reflective of the sounds he was absorbing from his environment. This period of learning the ropes, of playing countless gigs and composing his first tentative pieces, was fundamental. It instilled in him the discipline of performance, the sensitivity of improvisation, and the foundational understanding of how music functions in a social context. Washington, D.C. became his informal conservatory, a vibrant classroom where the lessons were learned not from textbooks, but from the keys of a piano and the reactions of an appreciative audience. Amidst his burgeoning musical endeavours, a significant personal development occurred in Edward Ellington's life. In 1918, at the age of 19, he entered into marriage with Edna Thompson. Edna, a young woman from Washington, D.C., became his wife during a period when Ellington was still establishing himself as a musician, navigating the local scene with a blend of ambition and youthful energy. Their union marked a new chapter, bringing with it the responsibilities and joys of domestic life alongside his artistic pursuits. The following year, in 1919, their family grew with the birth of their son, Mercer Kennedy Ellington. This event brought a new dimension to Ellington's existence, transforming him into a father at a relatively young age. The arrival of Mercer meant that the pursuit of music, which had previously been a passion and a developing career, now also carried the weight of providing for a wife and child. This added layer of responsibility would profoundly shape his decisions and drive in the years to come. Balancing the demands of a nascent musical career with the obligations of a young family presented considerable challenges. The life of an aspiring musician in early 20th century Washington, D.C., She was often characterized by irregular hours, modest pay, and a constant hustle for engagements. Ellington's days were likely a complex tapestry woven with late nights at the piano, the search for new gigs, and the more domestic rhythms of family life. The stability and comfort he aimed to provide for Edna and Mercer became a powerful motivator, pushing him to refine his craft and seek greater opportunities. The financial realities of supporting a family would have been a persistent consideration. While Ellington was gaining recognition in local circles, the substantial income and widespread fame that would later define his career were still distant prospects. This period required resilience and dedication not only from Ellington himself but also from Edna, who undoubtedly supported his musical ambitions while managing the household. The early years of their marriage and Mercer's infancy were therefore a time of foundation laying, both personally and professionally, marked by a constant negotiation between artistic aspiration and familial duty. Despite the inherent difficulties, the presence of his family provided a grounding influence. The experiences of marriage and fatherhood undoubtedly contributed to his emotional depth and understanding of human experience, elements that would later infuse his compositions with a rich complexity. This era represented a crucial phase in Ellington's life, where the personal and professional began to intertwine, laying the groundwork for the extraordinary journey that lay ahead. The quiet rhythms of family life in Washington, D.C. formed a counterpoint to the vibrant, often unpredictable, world of music that was increasingly calling to him. As the 1920s unfolded, a new magnetic force began to exert its pull on Edward Ellington. The musical landscape of Washington, D.C., while nurturing in his formative years, was beginning to feel constricting for his burgeoning ambitions. Whispers and stories of a different kind of energy, a more expansive and dynamic environment, emanated from New York City, particularly from the vibrant district of Harlem. For a young musician with a growing sense of his own potential, this urban centre represented an irresistible draw. The decision to relocate to New York was not made lightly, given his young family and the established, if modest, comfort of his life in D.C. However, the lure of Harlem was powerful and deeply compelling. It was a place where black artists, intellectuals, and musicians were congregating, creating a cultural renaissance that was unlike anything seen before. This burgeoning scene offered not just opportunities for performance, but also a rich tapestry of influences, collaborations, and an audience eager for new sounds. For Ellington, it was clear that if he wished to truly elevate his musical artistry and make a significant mark, he needed to immerse himself in this crucible of creativity. The move itself, occurring in the early 1920s, marked a pivotal moment. It was a step into the unknown, a journey away from the familiar rhythms of his hometown towards a city that promised both immense possibility and formidable competition. New York, with its countless clubs, theatres, and recording studios, was the undisputed epicenter of American popular music, but to be absent from it was to be on the periphery. To be within it was to be at the very heart of innovation. Harlem, in particular, presented a new horizon. Its streets hummed with a unique energy, a blend of sophisticated artistry and raw, expressive vitality. The area was a magnet for talent, drawing performers, composers, and innovators from across the nation. For Ellington, the move was not merely a change of address, it was a strategic imperative, a necessary migration to a place where his musical ideas could fully blossom and find their rightful audience. He understood that while his roots in Washington, D.C. had provided a strong foundation, the grand architecture of his future career required a different, grander stage. This relocation was an act of faith in his own talent, and a recognition that the next chapter of his musical journey could only truly begin in the vibrant, demanding, and ultimately transformative landscape of New York City. Upon arriving in Harlem, Edward Ellington found himself immersed in an extraordinary period of cultural blossoming, an era now famously known as the Harlem Renaissance. This was not merely a geographical location, but a vibrant crucible of black artistic, literary and musical expression that redefined American culture. The streets of Harlem thrummed with intellectual discourse, creative energy, and a profound sense of racial pride and self-discovery. Artists, writers, poets, and musicians converged there, each contributing to a collective explosion of creativity. Langston Hughes penned evocative verses, Zora Neale Hurston wove rich narratives, and visual artists like Aaron Douglas crafted powerful imagery. These varied expressions were deeply interconnected, each facet of the Renaissance informing and inspiring the others. It was a time when the very definition of American art was being expanded and enriched by the powerful voices of the African American community. For Ellington, this environment was profoundly transformative. It offered an unparalleled opportunity to witness and participate in a movement that celebrated black identity and pushed the boundaries of artistic form. He was not just a musician seeking work, he was an artist entering a dynamic dialogue. The intellectual ferment and the sheer volume of creative output in Harlem undoubtedly broadened his perspective, encouraging him to think beyond mere entertainment and to consider the deeper cultural significance of his own music. The nightclubs and dance halls of Harlem, where Ellington would soon make his mark, were not isolated venues of diversion. They were vital spaces within this broader cultural movement, places where new musical forms were forged, where social connections were made, and where the energy of the Renaissance was most tangibly felt. The music performed there, particularly jazz, became a sonic emblem of the era, reflecting its complexities, its joys, and its aspirations. Ellington's sensibilities, already inclined towards elegance and innovation, were further refined by this immersive experience. He observed the sophisticated social dynamics, absorbed the diverse artistic currents, and recognized the power of art to both entertain and to make profound statements. The Harlem Renaissance instilled in him a deeper understanding of the cultural weight his music could carry, fostering an aspiration not just to play well, but to create music that was thoughtful, distinctive, and reflective of the richness of black experience. This period solidified his artistic identity, moving him beyond the realm of a local band leader to that of a composer with a broader vision and a profound connection to the cultural currents of his time. The creative energies of Harlem became an integral part of his own artistic DNA, shaping the very essence of his future endeavours. The vibrant promise of Harlem, while artistically stimulating, did not immediately translate into effortless success for Edward Ellington. His initial years in New York were marked by the practical challenges of any aspiring musician in a bustling, competitive city. Finding consistent work, securing reliable venues, and assembling a cohesive musical unit required persistence and strategic manoeuvring. The sheer number of talented performers vying for attention meant that even a musician of Ellington's growing skill needed to labour diligently to carve out a niche. He had arrived with several musicians from Washington, D.C., and forming the nucleus of what would become his first significant ensemble. This group, initially known as the Washingtonians, comprised individuals who shared a history and a burgeoning understanding of Ellington's musical direction. The early gigs were often modest, playing for dances, private parties, and in smaller clubs throughout Harlem. These engagements, while not always glamorous, were crucial for building cohesion within the band and for refining their collective sound. The Harlem music scene of the early 1920s was a dynamic ecosystem. It demanded versatility, an ability to adapt to different audiences, and a capacity to stand out amidst a multitude of talented groups. The Washingtonians had to learn to navigate this landscape, to develop a repertoire that appealed to the prevailing tastes, while simultaneously beginning to introduce the subtle innovations that were taking shape in Ellington's mind. They honed their craft through countless performances, each one a step in their collective evolution. Their sound began to distinguish itself, characterized by a growing sophistication that blended the popular dance rhythms of the era with a nascent orchestral approach. Ellington's piano playing, already distinctive, provided a rhythmic and harmonic anchor around which the other instruments would weave their parts. The early breakthrough moments were often small, incremental triumphs, a steady engagement at a particular club, a positive reception from a discerning audience, or the gradual expansion of their network within the music industry. One pivotal connection was with the drummer Sonny Greer, a charismatic and talented musician who had become a long-standing member of Ellington's orchestra. Greer's arrival, along with other key personnel, helped solidify the band's identity and provided a stable foundation upon which Ellington could begin to build his more ambitious musical ideas. These early years in New York, though marked by struggle, were essential for forging the resilience, the collective identity, and the practical experience that would soon propel the Washingtonians and Edward Ellington himself to greater prominence within the Harlem music scene and beyond. The dedicated efforts of Edward Ellington and the Washingtonians in Harlem eventually led to a significant opportunity that would prove pivotal for their development. In the mid-1920s, the band secured a residency at the Kentucky Club, a prominent establishment located in Midtown Manhattan. This was a crucial step, moving them from the vibrant but sometimes insular Harlem scene to a more visible stage, frequented by a broader and often more affluent audience. The Kentucky Club residency provided a stable environment, a consistent platform for performance that allowed Ellington a degree of security previously unavailable. This stability was invaluable for the band's growth. Night after night they would play to diverse crowds, performing popular tunes, dance numbers, and increasingly Ellington's own compositions. This continuous engagement allowed for an organic evolution of their sound. The musicians gained an intimate understanding of each other's styles, learning to anticipate nuances and respond instinctively within the music. During this period, the Washingtonians began to gradually expand in size. Adding more instruments to the ensemble was not merely about increasing volume, it was about expanding the palette of sounds available to Ellington. Each new musician brought a unique voice, a distinct timbre that could be woven into the developing orchestral fabric. This expansion allowed Ellington to experiment with more complex arrangements, to layer melodies, and to explore richer harmonic textures. The inclusion of new brass and reed players meant he could begin to craft the distinctive voicings that would later become a hallmark of his mature style. The repertoire also grew significantly at the Kentucky Club. While they still played popular numbers to satisfy the club's patrons, Ellington increasingly introduced his own works. These early compositions began to showcase his emerging genius for melody and arrangement. The demands of playing nightly, of keeping an audience engaged, pushed him to continuously create new material and to refine existing pieces. It was a period of intense learning and creative output, a crucible where raw talent was forged into a more polished and distinctive artistic identity. The exposure gained at the Kentucky Club was vital. Not only did they reach a wider audience, but they also began to attract the attention of music industry figures, critics, and other musicians. The band's performances became a talking point. Their unique blend of sophisticated dance music and burgeoning jazz artistry, capturing the imagination of those who heard them. This sustained period of performance and development laid the groundwork for the more profound recognition that would follow, marking the Kentucky Club era as a foundational chapter in Duke Ellington's ascendance. The burgeoning artistic development observed during the Kentucky club years was significantly amplified by the emergence of a key figure in Duke Ellington's professional life, Irving Mills. Mills, a white music publisher, manager, and impresario, entered Ellington's orbit during the mid-1920s, a period when the band was gaining traction but still lacked the sophisticated business infrastructure necessary for national recognition. His arrival marked a profound shift in Ellington's career trajectory, moving him from a talented band leader to a nationally recognized musical force. Irving Mills possessed an astute understanding of the burgeoning music industry and the burgeoning popularity of jazz. He recognized the unique genius within Ellington's music and the potential for wider commercial appeal. Mills quickly became Ellington's manager and publisher, a dual role that granted him significant influence over the band's direction and finances. One of his most crucial contributions was securing recording contracts for Ellington and his orchestra. In an era when radio and phonograph records were rapidly transforming the music landscape, consistent recording was paramount for reaching a broad audience beyond the confines of a single club. Mills leveraged his industry connections to ensure Ellington's music was regularly captured and distributed by various labels, including Brunswick, Victor, and Columbia. Beyond simply securing contracts, Mills actively promoted the band. He understood the power of branding and worked to present Duke Ellington as a sophisticated and innovative artist. He arranged for numerous recording sessions, often under various pseudonyms, which allowed Ellington to experiment with different sounds and styles while simultaneously flooding the market with his music. And this strategic saturation ensured that Ellington's name and sound became increasingly familiar to the American public. Mills was also instrumental in booking the band into more prestigious venues and arranging for their appearances in films, further elevating their profile. The relationship between Ellington and Mills was undoubtedly complex. Mills played an indispensable role in catapulting Ellington to national prominence, providing the business acumen and industry access that Ellington, primarily an artist, did not possess. However, the nature of their partnership also involved certain arrangements that, in retrospect, raise questions about equitable compensation and artistic ownership. Mills often took co-writing credits on many of Ellington's compositions, a practice common in that era, which entitled him to a share of the royalties. While this arrangement provided financial backing and promotional power, it also meant that a portion of Ellington's creative output was shared, both financially and in terms of public acknowledgement. Despite these complexities, Irving Mills's impact on shaping Ellington's early career trajectory cannot be overstated. He was the catalyst that transformed a talented local band into a national sensation, navigating the intricate pathways of the music business to bring Ellington's unique sound to the wider world. His managerial prowess and promotional strategies were essential components in the foundation of Duke Ellington's legendary career. The strategic efforts of Irving Mills, combined with Duke Ellington's evolving musical prowess, culminated in a truly transformative opportunity, the residency at the Cotton Club. This prestigious Harlem nightclub, while operating under the deeply problematic racial policies of the era, featuring black performers for an exclusively white clientele, was nonetheless a powerful platform for national exposure. The circumstances surrounding Ellington's securing of this coveted engagement in late 1927 are illustrative of the competitive and often fortuitous nature of the music business during that period. The initial offer for the Cotton Club residency had in fact been extended to another prominent bandleader, King Oliver. Oliver, a legendary cornetist and a significant influence on early jazz, was a well-established figure. However, a dispute over salary or some other logistical detail led to Oliver's refusal of the engagement. This unexpected turn created an opening, and Irving Mills, ever vigilant for opportunities to advance Ellington's career, moved swiftly. Mills, with his keen understanding of the club's needs for a sophisticated yet exotic sound to accompany its elaborate floor shows, presented Ellington's orchestra as the ideal replacement. The decision to offer the residency to Ellington was not merely a matter of chance. It was a testament to the band's growing reputation and the unique qualities of their music. By this point, Ellington and his musicians had cultivated a distinctive sound characterized by rich harmonies, inventive arrangements, and a growing repertoire of original compositions. Their performances at the Kentucky Club and their increasingly frequent recording sessions had created a buzz, marking them as a band with significant potential. The jungle sound, a style Ellington was beginning to explore and refine, with its growling brass and evocative textures, was particularly appealing to the Cotton Club's aesthetic, which often played into exoticized portrayals of African American culture. The significance of the Cotton Club residency for Duke Ellington's orchestra cannot be overstated. It provided an unprecedented platform for national exposure. The club's shows were regularly broadcast live over radio waves, reaching audiences across the United States. This meant that Ellington's music, previously confined to local clubs and records, now entered homes nationwide, introducing his innovative arrangements and the band's unique sound to millions. The consistent engagement also demanded a high level of artistic development. Ellington was required to compose and arrange new music constantly, to accompany the various acts and reviews, pushing his creative boundaries and expanding his compositional vocabulary. This sustained period of performance and composition, under the intense scrutiny of a national audience, was a crucible for Ellington's genius. It allowed him to further experiment with orchestral colours, develop his unique approach to harmony, and refine his ability to write for individual musicians, harnessing their specific talents. The Cotton Club, despite its problematic context, became the launchpad for Duke Ellington's ascension to true stardom, solidifying his place as a pioneering force in American music. The Cotton Club, situated in Harlem, was not merely a nightclub. It was a carefully constructed fantasy, designed to appeal to the taste of its predominantly white, wealthy downtown clientele. Its interior was adorned with an exoticized aesthetic, featuring palm trees, murals depicting jungle scenes, and a general atmosphere that evoked a romanticized, often stereotypical vision of the American South or African wilderness. The club's shows were elaborate reviews, showcasing a chorus line of beautiful black dancers, comedians, and specialty acts, all backed by a live orchestra. For the patrons, it offered an escape into a world of glamour, excitement, and a carefully curated sense of danger, all while maintaining a strict colour line that prevented black patrons from entering, except for the performers themselves. Duke Ellington and his orchestra became the house band at the Cotton Club in December 1927, marking the beginning of an era that would profoundly shape his music and his public image. The schedule at the club was rigorous and demanding. The band was expected to perform multiple sets each night, accompanying various acts, playing for dancing, and providing incidental music for the elaborate stage productions. This constant requirement for new material meant that Ellington was under continuous pressure to compose, arrange, and rehearse. The music had to be versatile, capable of shifting from the sultry rhythms for a dancer to a lively accompaniment for a comedic sketch, to a grand orchestral fanfare for a show-stopping number. This demanding environment, rather than stifling Ellington's creativity, instead served as a powerful catalyst for innovation. He was compelled to experiment with different musical forms, textures, and moods, yet the specific needs of the Cotton Club's reviews often dictated the character of his compositions, leading to the development of pieces that were highly visual and evocative. The jungle sound, which had helped secure the residency, was further refined and expanded upon during this period. Ellington utilized the unique timbres of his individual musicians, such as Bubba Miley's growling trumpet or Joe Nanton's Tricky Sam trombone, to create distinctive, often dramatic effects that perfectly complemented the club's exotic ambience. The Cotton Club also provided Ellington with an unparalleled opportunity to hone his skills as an arranger and orchestrator. He learned to craft music that was both complex and accessible, capable of captivating a diverse audience. The live radio broadcasts from the club, reaching listeners across the nation, and meant that his musical experiments and innovations were heard by a vast public. These broadcasts elevated Ellington's profile from a local bandleader to a national figure, solidifying his reputation as a master of sophisticated modern jazz. The demanding schedule and the unique artistic requirements of the Cotton Club thus forged a significant portion of Ellington's musical identity, pushing him to continuously innovate and compose, laying the groundwork for his future masterpieces. The Cotton Club's thematic focus on exoticism and primal imagery directly influenced the further development of what became known as Duke Ellington's jungle sound. This distinctive musical style was not a spontaneous creation, but rather an evolution, refined and intensified by the specific demands of the club's elaborate floor shows. These productions frequently featured dancers in animal skins or elaborate costumes, performing amid stage sets designed to evoke a stylized, often sensationalized vision of African or tropical landscapes. Ellington's music was tasked with providing the sonic backdrop for these visual narratives, creating an atmosphere that was at once mysterious, thrilling, and deeply rhythmic. Central to the jungle sound was the innovative use of instrumental techniques, particularly by the brass section. Mutes, in various forms, became indispensable tools. Plunger mutes, derby mutes, and straight mutes were employed not just to soften or alter a horn's timbre, but to create a wide array of vocal-like effects. Trumpeter Bubba Miley was a master of the growl, a technique achieved by manipulating a plunger mute while simultaneously singing or humming into the instrument. This produced a raw, guttural sound, reminiscent of a human voice or an animalistic cry, which became a hallmark of the early Ellington orchestra. Trombonist Joe Tricky Sam Nanton similarly developed a unique wah-wah effect with his plunger mute, creating speaking or moaning sounds that added another layer of expressive depth. Ellington's genius lay in his ability to integrate these individual instrumental voices into a cohesive and evocative whole. He composed and arranged pieces that specifically highlighted these techniques, allowing his musicians to express themselves within a structured framework. The instrumental voicings were often unconventional, with instruments blended in ways that created rich, dark, and sometimes unsettling harmonies. The brass section might play dissonant chords with a heavy vibrato, while the reeds provided a slithering serpentine counterpoint. Percussion, though not always prominent, contributed subtle rhythmic textures that underscored the primal energy. Compositions such as East St. Louis Toodle-oo, Black and Tan Fantasy, and the Moochie exemplify the jungle sound during this period. These pieces were not merely tunes, they were sonic tapestries designed to transport the listener to an imagined realm. They showcased a deliberate effort to push the boundaries of conventional jazz orchestration, creating a sound that was both sophisticated in its construction and visceral in its impact. The jungle sound served the immediate needs of the Cotton Club's entertainment, but in doing so, it also allowed Ellington to forge a unique musical language that would define a significant chapter of his early career and leave an indelible mark on the history of jazz. The true catalyst for Duke Ellington's ascent to national prominence during his Cotton Club tenure was the advent of radio broadcasting. The club, recognizing the immense promotional potential, began to air live performances directly from its bandstand. These nightly broadcasts, often carried by major national networks, extended Ellington's music far beyond the confines of Harlem's exclusive nightclub, projecting his unique sound into homes across the vast expanse of America. In an era before television and widespread recorded music distribution, radio was the primary medium through which new sounds and artists reached the masses. For many Americans, particularly those outside of major urban centres, these broadcasts offered their first exposure to the vibrant and evolving world of jazz. Ellington's orchestra, with its distinctive jungle sound and sophisticated arrangements, stood out amidst the numerous dance bands of the era. The growling brass, the slithering reeds, and the intricate rhythmic interplay previously experienced only by the patrons of the Cotton Club now became a nightly accompaniment to dinner or quiet evenings for listeners from coast to coast. The impact of this widespread exposure was profound. Suddenly, Duke Ellington was more than just a talented bandleader. He was a national figure. People who had never set foot in Harlem, and indeed many who would never have been permitted entry into the segregated Cotton Club, became familiar with his compositions and the individual voices of his musicians. The sheer regularity of the broadcasts helped to solidify his presence in the public consciousness. Listeners developed a rapport with the music, anticipating the next nightly performance, and perhaps even recognizing the distinct improvisational styles of Bubba Miley or Johnny Hodges. This continuous radio presence served as an unparalleled promotional tool, fostering a growing fan base and generating significant interest in Ellington's recordings. Record sales began to climb as listeners sought to own the music they heard on the airwaves. The broadcasts also cemented the Cotton Club's reputation as a premier entertainment venue, indirectly benefiting Ellington by associating him with an establishment that, despite its problematic racial dynamics, was undeniably at the forefront of popular culture. Through these early radio transmissions, Duke Ellington's music transcended geographical and social barriers. It allowed a wider audience to appreciate the innovative artistry that was being cultivated within the vibrant yet often constrained world of the Harlem Renaissance. The broadcasts democratized access to his sound, transforming him from a local sensation into a widely recognized and admired musical force, laying the groundwork for his future international acclaim and enduring legacy. This era marked a crucial turning point, where technological advancement met artistic brilliance, propelling Ellington onto the national stage. During his foundational years, particularly those spent at the Cotton Club, Duke Ellington became a master of the short-form composition. The constraints of the recording industry and radio programming at the time often dictated that pieces be concise, typically fitting onto one side of a 78 RPM record, which allowed for roughly 3 minutes of music. Ellington, ever pragmatic and artistically ambitious, embraced these limitations not as hindrances, but as frameworks within which to innovate. He understood the commercial necessity of these compact pieces, recognizing that they were the primary means by which his music would be disseminated and remembered. This period saw a prolific output of such works, each a miniature sonic world unto itself, yet collectively building a recognizable and evolving style. Compositions like East St. Louis Toodaloo, recorded in 1926, served as an early signature piece, opening with the distinctive growling trumpet of Bubba Miley. This piece exemplified the developing jungle sound, conjuring images through sound alone, without the need for elaborate narratives. It was a study in atmosphere and character, each instrument contributing to a collective, evocative statement within its brief duration. Another significant work from this era was Black and Tan Fantasy, first recorded in 1927. This composition explored themes of contrast and duality, a reflection perhaps of the complex racial landscape of the time, and certainly of the interplay between light and shadow within the Cotton Club's exotic presentation. It featured alternating sections that showcased both the mournful, blues-inflected side of Ellington's writing and the more exuberant driving rhythms of his orchestra. The piece concluded with a musical quotation from Chopin's Funeral March, an unexpected and poignant touch that added a layer of sophisticated artistry to its popular appeal. Then came the Mucci, first recorded in 1928, a piece that further solidified Ellington's unique harmonic and textural palette. It was characterized by its slinky, somewhat mysterious melody, often carried by the clarinet, and its rich, dense orchestration. The Mucci showcased Ellington's growing ability to blend individual instrumental voices into a cohesive yet richly varied ensemble sound. These compositions, among many others, were not merely catchy tunes. They were carefully crafted explorations of mood, colour and rhythm, demonstrating an increasingly sophisticated compositional mind working within the popular music idiom. Ellington's mastery of these short-form pieces was crucial. They were the vehicles that carried his innovative ideas to a broad audience, establishing his reputation not just as a bandleader, but as a significant composer whose music possessed both commercial appeal and profound artistic depth. Each brief recording was a testament to his ability to distill complex musical thoughts into memorable, impactful statements that resonated with listeners and critics alike. Duke Ellington possessed a profoundly unique philosophy regarding composition, one that diverged significantly from the conventional orchestral approaches of his time. He did not merely write notes on a page for generic instruments. Rather, he composed for the specific individuals within his ensemble. His orchestra was not a collection of interchangeable parts, but a living, breathing entity, each musician a distinct voice contributing to a singular expressive instrument. Ellington cultivated a deep understanding of each player's individual sound, their particular timbre, their rhythmic sensibilities, and their improvisational strengths. He knew, for instance, the distinctive growl of Bubba Miley's trumpet, the lyrical warmth of Johnny Hodges's alto saxophone, or the robust yet agile bass of Jimmy Blanton. When composing, Ellington would often have these specific voices in mind, tailoring parts to highlight their unique qualities. A melody might be conceived specifically for Hodges's velvety tone, or a rhythmic figure designed to showcase the precise articulation of a certain drummer. This intimate knowledge allowed him to achieve an unparalleled richness and subtlety in his orchestrations. He fostered an environment where his musicians were encouraged to develop their individual styles, knowing that these unique personalities would ultimately enhance the collective sound. This approach meant that Ellington's scores were not simply blueprints for performance, but rather frameworks that allowed for the integrated expression of many distinct artistic temperaments. The interplay between written arrangement and individual improvisation became a hallmark of his music, creating a dynamic tension and fluidity that set his orchestra apart. To Ellington, the entire ensemble functioned as one grand, versatile instrument. He would manipulate its various sections, the brass, the reeds, the rhythm section, as if they were different registers or tonal colours on a single vast keyboard. He could achieve a seamless blend, or create stark contrasts, using the unique sounds of his musicians as his palette. This holistic perspective meant that the orchestra's sound was inextricably linked to the specific personnel within it. A piece performed by Ellington's orchestra would sound profoundly different, and arguably less authentic if played by another ensemble, precisely because the compositions were so deeply interwoven with the identities of his musicians. This method of composition, centered on the individual talents of his band members, was a cornerstone of Ellington's genius. It allowed him to craft music of extraordinary nuance and character, transforming a group of musicians into a singular, expressive entity. The Duke Ellington Orchestra, therefore, was more than just a band. It was a carefully constructed instrument, tuned and played by its maestro with an unparalleled sensitivity to the human element within its sound. The distinctive character of Duke Ellington's orchestra, particularly during its formative years in the transformative Cotton Club era, was profoundly shaped by a cadre of exceptional musicians whose individual voices became indispensable to the ensemble's identity. Ellington understood that the true strength of his music lay not just in his own compositions, but in how those compositions interacted with the unique artistry of his players. Among the most influential of these early collaborators was Bubba Miley, a trumpet player whose innovative use of the plunger mute created sounds that were at once vocal, guttural, and deeply expressive. Miley's growl and wah-wah effects were central to the jungle sound that captivated Cotton Club audiences. Ellington often built entire pieces around Miley's improvisational prowess, allowing his trumpet to mimic the human voice or evoke the cries of distant animals, lending an exotic, almost primal quality to the music. Miley's contributions were not merely ornamental, they were foundational to the orchestra's sonic signature, inspiring Ellington to explore a broader spectrum of tonal colour and emotional depth. Alongside Miley stood Joe "Tricky Sam" Nanton, a trombonist who further expanded the expressive possibilities of brass. Nanton, too, was a master of the plunger and derby mutes, developing a unique wah-wah technique that produced a remarkably human, almost speaking quality from his instrument. His solos often possessed a mournful yet playful character, adding layers of pathos and wit to Ellington's arrangements. Ellington frequently paired Nanton and Miley, creating a dialogue between their muted brass instruments that was both intricate and profoundly evocative, forming the very core of the orchestra's early identity. Then there was Johnny Hodges, the alto saxophonist whose lush, sensuous tone would become one of the most identifiable sounds in jazz history. Hodges possessed an unparalleled ability to imbue melodies with a rich warmth and lyrical beauty. His solos were characterized by their smooth legato lines and a vibrato that was both elegant and deeply emotional. Ellington recognized Hodges' extraordinary gift for melody and often featured him prominently, writing ballads and romantic themes specifically to showcase his exquisite sound. Hodges' presence elevated the orchestra's capacity for tenderness and sophistication, balancing the raw energy of the brass section. Completing this quartet of early giants was Harry Carney, the baritone saxophonist who joined the band at a remarkably young age. Carney's deep, resonant sound provided a grounding force for the entire reed section, giving it a profound sense of gravity and authority. He was also a formidable soloist, capable of both powerful, driving lines and surprisingly nimble improvisations. Carney's steadfast presence and consistent musicality anchored the orchestra for decades, providing a rich harmonic foundation upon which Ellington could build his complex tonal structures. These musicians were not simply employees, they were integral partners in Ellington's creative process. Their individual voices became interwoven into the fabric of his compositions, making the Duke Ellington Orchestra a truly collaborative entity, where the genius of the composer was amplified by the unique brilliance of his players. Having established a formidable presence in the United States through radio and recordings, Duke Ellington and his orchestra embarked on their first European tour in 1933. This journey across the Atlantic marked a significant turning point, offering the musicians a reception that starkly contrasted with the entrenched racial prejudices prevalent in their homeland. The orchestra's arrival in Europe, particularly in England and France, was met with an outpouring of enthusiasm and genuine admiration. In London, Ellington was hailed not merely as a popular band leader, but as a serious artist, a composer of profound originality. Audiences and critics alike were captivated by the sophistication and emotional depth of his music, recognizing its intricate harmonies and innovative orchestrations. The concerts were sellouts, and the press lauded Ellington as a musical genius, a distinction that, while acknowledged in certain American circles, was often overshadowed by the prevailing racial attitudes of the time. This European perspective allowed Ellington to see himself and his work through a different lens, one that celebrated his artistic merit without the burden of racial categorization. The experience was deeply moving for Ellington and his band members. They encountered a level of respect and dignity that was often denied to them in America. In many European cities they could move freely, dine in public restaurants, and stay in hotels without facing the segregationist practices that were a daily reality back home. This freedom, however temporary, provided a powerful affirmation of their humanity and their artistic value. The absence of overt racial discrimination allowed them to experience a world where their talent was the paramount consideration. Beyond the personal uplift, the European tours facilitated a significant cultural exchange. Ellington met with prominent European composers and intellectuals, engaging in discussions about music, art, and society. He absorbed new influences and broadened his artistic perspectives, drawing inspiration from the rich European musical traditions while simultaneously sharing the distinct sound of American jazz. This exposure to different cultural landscapes and artistic philosophies undoubtedly enriched his compositional palette, contributing to the evolving complexity of his later works. The enthusiastic reception in Europe served as a potent validation of Ellington's artistic vision. It reinforced his belief in the universal power of music to transcend boundaries and connect people. The tours were not just a series of successful performances. They were a profound cultural experience that expanded the horizons of Duke Ellington and his orchestra, imbuing them with renewed purpose and a deeper understanding of their global artistic significance. The early 1930s brought unprecedented economic turmoil to the United States, as the Great Depression cast a long shadow over every facet of American life. For many musicians and orchestras, these years were marked by severe hardship, dwindling engagements, and the eventual dissolution of once thriving ensembles. Yet, amidst this widespread economic distress, Duke Ellington and his orchestra managed not only to survive but, in some respects, to strengthen their position within the entertainment landscape. Ellington's ability to navigate these challenging times was a testament to several factors. His established popularity, cultivated through years of meticulous performance at the Cotton Club and extensive radio broadcasts, had created a loyal and widespread audience. While discretionary spending for entertainment diminished for many, there remained a segment of the population, particularly in larger urban centres, that continued to seek diversion and escape through music. Ellington's distinctive sound, nor with its sophisticated arrangements and captivating melodies, offered precisely that. Furthermore, the astute management of Irving Mills played a crucial role. Mills understood the mechanics of the music industry and worked tirelessly to secure engagements, recording contracts, and touring opportunities, even as the market contracted. His business acumen ensured that the orchestra remained active and visible, maintaining a consistent presence at a time when many of their contemporaries faded into obscurity. The financial stability, however relative, that Mills provided allowed Ellington to continue developing his unique musical vision without the immediate pressures of impending collapse. The orchestra's continued existence through the Depression was also a reflection of Ellington's commitment to his musicians. He maintained a cohesive unit, a family of artists whose individual talents he cherished and upon whom his sound was built. This loyalty fostered a stable environment, enabling the ensemble to refine its collective artistry and deepen its musical rapport. While other bands struggled to retain members or even find work, Ellington's orchestra remained a remarkably consistent and high-quality unit. This period also saw Ellington embrace new opportunities, such as his foray into film. In 1934, The orchestra appeared in the RKO picture Murder at the Vanities and the short film Symphony in Black, which showcased their talent to an even broader audience. These cinematic ventures, while perhaps not always financially lucrative on their own, served to maintain the orchestra's public profile and reinforce its status as a premier American musical institution. Thus, while the nation grappled with profound economic uncertainty, Duke Ellington's orchestra, through a combination of sustained popularity, shrewd management, steadfast ensemble loyalty, and an adaptive approach to new media, successfully traversed the harsh terrain of the Great Depression, emerging from the decade with its artistic integrity intact and its standing as a musical powerhouse solidified. As the 1930s progressed, Duke Ellington's musical imagination continued its expansive journey, leading him to explore new territories in composition and arrangement. The success and stability achieved during the challenging years of the Great Depression provided a foundation upon which he could further develop his artistic vision, moving beyond the established conventions of popular dance music. This period marked a significant evolution in his approach, characterized by a growing interest in extended forms, more intricate harmonic structures, and a gradual refinement of his orchestral sound. Ellington began to experiment with compositions that stretched beyond the typical 3-minute confines of a 78 RPM record side. This desire to create more substantial musical narratives led to works like Reminiscing in Tempo, recorded in 1935. This piece, nearly 13 minutes in length, was a bold departure, occupying all 4 sides of 2 records. It was a complex and introspective work, and demonstrating a sophisticated use of thematic development and emotional progression, rather than simply a string of solos. Such an ambitious undertaking signalled Ellington's growing aspiration to be recognised not merely as a band leader, but as a serious composer whose works deserved extended attention. Alongside these longer forms, Ellington's harmonic palette became increasingly rich and nuanced. He moved beyond the more direct blues-inflected harmonies of his earlier jungle sound period, incorporating a wider array of chords and voicings. His arrangements began to feature more chromaticism, subtle dissonances, and complex chord substitutions, adding layers of sophistication and depth to his music. This harmonic adventurousness was often woven seamlessly into his compositions, enhancing their emotional resonance without sacrificing their inherent melodic appeal. The very texture of his orchestra's sound also underwent a transformation. While the distinctive growls and plunger mute effects remained a part of his expressive toolkit, they were now integrated into a broader, more polished orchestral sound. The raw exotic aesthetics often associated with the Cotton Club era gradually gave way to a sound that was at once elegant and powerful, capable of conveying a wider range of moods and colours. This shift reflected a desire for greater artistic breadth and a move towards a more universal appeal, transcending the specific theatrical demands of his earlier residencies. Ellington's compositions from this era, such as Diminuendo in Blue and Crescendo in Blue, though recorded later, demonstrate the foundational ideas he was exploring: the manipulation of dynamics, the building of tension, and the crafting of sustained musical statements. These pieces showcased a composer increasingly focused on the architecture of music, seeking to build narratives and emotional arcs through sound. This continuous experimentation with form and harmony laid the groundwork for many of his later, more ambitious works, marking a period of profound artistic growth and a definitive step towards a more comprehensive orchestral identity. In the year 1939, a significant event transpired that would profoundly shape the future trajectory of Duke Ellington's musical endeavours. This was the arrival of William Thomas Strayhorn, universally known as Billy Strayhorn, into the orbit of the Ellington Orchestra. Strayhorn, a gifted pianist, composer, and a ranger from Pittsburgh presented himself to Ellington with a demonstration of his talents, a moment that would initiate one of the most enduring and creatively fertile collaborations in American music history. Strayhorn's initial encounter with Ellington led to a swift and deep connection. The anecdote recounts that Ellington, impressed by Strayhorn's musicality, gave him directions to his apartment, which Strayhorn then turned into the composition "Take the A Train." While this narrative has taken on a legendary quality, the essential truth remains. Strayhorn quickly became an indispensable part of the Ellington organisation. He was initially hired as an arranger, but his role rapidly expanded, evolving into that of a trusted collaborator, co-composer and musical alter ego to Ellington himself. His immediate impact on the orchestra's sound was both subtle and profound. Strayhorn possessed a sophisticated harmonic sensibility and a remarkable gift for melody, complementing Ellington's own distinctive style. He brought a fresh perspective and a refined touch to the arrangements, often providing a lightness and clarity that enhanced the orchestra's already rich palette. His compositions and arrangements were characterized by their elegance, intricate voicings, and a certain lyrical quality that broadened the emotional range of the band's repertoire. Strayhorn's presence freed Ellington to explore even greater compositional ambitions. With a trusted musical mind to assist with the often arduous task of arranging and transcribing, Ellington could focus more intensely on the larger architectural forms of his extended works. Yet Strayhorn became adept at understanding Ellington's musical ideas, often translating them into polished scores, or developing themes in ways that felt organically Ellingtonian, yet bore the unmistakable mark of Strayhorn's own genius. The collaboration between Ellington and Strayhorn was unique in its depth and longevity. They shared a common musical language, often completing each other's musical thoughts. Strayhorn's contributions included iconic pieces such as Chelsea Bridge, with its evocative harmonies, and the aforementioned Take the A Train, which would famously become the orchestra's signature theme. These works, among many others, demonstrate how Strayhorn's arrival injected new vitality and expanded the compositional breadth of the Duke Ellington Orchestra, solidifying its position at the forefront of jazz innovation. His influence was not merely additive, it was transformative, helping to usher in what many consider to be one of the orchestra's most creatively fertile periods. The period stretching from 1939 to 1942 is frequently regarded by historians and enthusiasts alike as a golden era for the Duke Ellington Orchestra. This designation is often attributed to the exceptional confluence of talent within the ensemble during these years, particularly the pivotal contributions of two new members, bassist Jimmy Blanton and tenor saxophonist Ben Webster. Their integration into the orchestra, alongside the established stalwarts and the fresh influence of Billy Strayhorn, created a sound of unparalleled richness and sophistication. Jimmy Blanton, though his career was tragically short-lived, revolutionized the role of the bass in jazz. Before Blanton, the bass was primarily a rhythmic instrument, providing a foundational pulse. Blanton, however, introduced a melodic and soloistic approach, demonstrating a virtuosity and harmonic imagination previously unheard on the instrument. His lines were fluid and intricate, possessing a clear articulation that allowed the bass to emerge as a distinct voice within the orchestral texture. His presence provided a new depth and agility to the rhythm section, elevating its importance beyond mere timekeeping. Recordings from this era reveal Blanton's profound impact, offering a propulsive yet elegant underpinning to the ensemble. Concurrently, Ben Webster brought his distinctive tenor saxophone sound to the orchestra. Webster possessed a warm, robust tone capable of both tender lyricism and powerful, blues-inflected improvisation, yet his solos were characterized by their melodic ingenuity and emotional depth, adding a rich, expressive layer to Ellington's compositions. Webster had a remarkable ability to blend seamlessly with the ensemble, yet his individual voice always shone through. He became one of Ellington's most celebrated soloists. His interpretations of ballads like Cottontail, or his fiery exchanges in faster numbers, becoming hallmarks of the band's artistry. The combined effect of Blanton and Webster, alongside the established brilliance of musicians like Johnny Hodges, Cootie Williams and Rex Stewart, and the burgeoning compositional partnership with Billy Strayhorn, fostered an environment of extraordinary musical creativity. Ellington was able to write with specific instrumental voices in mind, knowing that his compositions would be brought to life by musicians who were not only master technicians, but also profound musical personalities. This period yielded an astonishing catalogue of recordings that showcase the orchestra at its peak. Pieces like Coco, Concerto for Cootie, Harlem Airshaft, Jack the Bear, and Take the A Train exemplify the intricate arrangements, dynamic interplay, and individual brilliance that defined the Blanton-Webster band. The orchestra's sound during these years was characterized by a perfect balance of tight ensemble playing, an individual improvisation, a sophisticated harmonic palette, and a rhythmic drive that was both powerful and nuanced. It was a time when the Ellington Orchestra achieved an artistic zenith, leaving an indelible mark on the history of jazz and American music. The early 1940s represented a period of immense creative fertility for Duke Ellington and his orchestra, yielding a collection of compositions that are now considered cornerstones of the jazz repertoire. These works not only showcase the virtuosity of the individual musicians, but also demonstrated Ellington's extraordinary ability to blend diverse musical personalities into a cohesive and innovative orchestral sound. Among these masterpieces, Take the A Train stands as perhaps the most iconic. While often associated with Ellington, this piece was in fact composed by Billy Strayhorn shortly after his arrival in New York. Its title refers to the IND 8th Avenue Express train line, which transported passengers to Harlem. The composition quickly became the signature theme of the Duke Ellington Orchestra, was an enduring musical identifier. Its bright, swinging tempo, memorable melody, and sophisticated harmonic progression perfectly encapsulated the vibrant energy of the era and the sophisticated sound of the band. Take the A Train is a testament to Strayhorn's compositional genius and the seamless integration of his voice into the Ellingtonian aesthetic. Another pivotal work from this period is Cottontail. This fast-paced, exhilarating piece features a complex harmonic structure and serves as a remarkable vehicle for tenor saxophonist Ben Webster. His dynamic solo on Cottontail is a masterclass in jazz improvisation, blending blues inflections with sophisticated melodic invention and a powerful rhythmic drive. The composition itself is a brilliant example of Ellington's ability to craft intricate arrangements that allow for both tightly coordinated ensemble passages and expansive soloing, pushing the boundaries of swing music. Coco, recorded in 1940, represents a deeper exploration of Ellington's jungle sound aesthetic, albeit with a refined complexity. This composition is notable for its dark, brooding atmosphere, unusual voicings, and the raw, expressive power of its soloists, particularly trombonist Joe "Tricky" Sam Nanton. Coco showcases Ellington's willingness to experiment with dissonance and unconventional harmonies, creating a mood that is both ancient and modern. It is a work of considerable dramatic tension and musical depth, illustrating Ellington's continuous push for new sonic landscapes. Finally, Concerto for Cootie highlights Ellington's unique approach to composition, often writing pieces specifically tailored to the unique styles of his musicians. This work is a showcase for trumpeter Cootie Williams, demonstrating his mastery of various muted trumpet techniques, from the growling jungle sound to a more lyrical open horn. The concerto is not a concerto in the classical sense, but rather a series of variations that spotlight Williams's versatility and expressive range. Its melodic beauty and intricate interplay between the soloist and the orchestra underscore Ellington's profound understanding of his musicians' capabilities and his genius in crafting music that allow their individual brilliance to shine. These compositions, among many others from the early 1940s, cemented the Duke Ellington Orchestra's reputation as a leading force in American music. They continue to be studied and performed, their enduring musical significance residing in their innovative structures, memorable melodies, and the timeless artistry they represent. As the early 1940s progressed, the burgeoning global conflict of World War II began to cast a long shadow over American society, profoundly impacting the entertainment industry and the big band era. The widespread mobilization for war brought with it a unique set of challenges that reshaped the landscape for musicians and orchestras, including that of Duke Ellington. One of the most significant difficulties was the issue of personnel. As young men across the nation were drafted into military service, big bands found it increasingly difficult to maintain a stable roster of musicians. The constant flux of personnel meant that the carefully cultivated sounds and intricate arrangements that defined many orchestras were under threat. Musicians vital to the unique identity of Ellington's ensemble were not immune to these calls to duty, leading to the necessity of frequent adjustments and adaptations within the band. Travel restrictions further complicated the touring life that was central to the big band model. Gas rationing, tyre shortages, and the prioritization of military transport made cross-country tours arduous and often impractical. Bands that once crisscrossed the nation, playing in ballrooms and theatres, found their movements constrained. This forced many ensembles to reconsider their performance schedules and find new ways to reach their audiences, often relying more heavily on radio broadcasts from stationary locations. The broader entertainment landscape also shifted under the weight of wartime realities. Public attention and resources were increasingly directed towards the war effort. While music remained a crucial source of solace and patriotic uplift, the lavish budgets and widespread commercial opportunities of the pre-war years began to diminish. The novelty and excitement of the big band era, though still potent, had to contend with the more somber mood of a nation at war. Despite these considerable obstacles, Duke Ellington and his orchestra continued their tireless work, understanding the vital role music played in maintaining national morale. Ellington's compositions and performances during this period often carried a subtle yet profound sense of patriotism and resilience. His music, with its inherent dignity and emotional depth, offered a form of cultural sustenance to a populace grappling with uncertainty. The orchestra's continued presence, whether on stage or through the airwaves, served as a reminder of the enduring spirit of American artistry. They provided moments of escape and uplift, contributing to the collective morale by offering a powerful and sophisticated soundtrack to a nation at war. Ellington, through his unwavering dedication to his craft, ensured that his music remained a source of strength and beauty during a challenging global epoch. In the midst of the wartime challenges, Duke Ellington embarked upon one of his most ambitious and significant compositional endeavours, Black, Brown and Beige, a tone parallel to the American Negro. This expansive work, a symphonic-length piece, was conceived as a musical history of Black Americans, a grand narrative stretching from the arrival of the first Africans in America through the spirituals, the Civil War, and into the contemporary experience. The premiere of Black, Brown and Beige took place on January 23, 1943, at the esteemed Carnegie Hall in New York City. This event marked a pivotal moment, as it was Ellington's debut performance in such a prestigious classical venue, a significant crossover for a jazz orchestra leader. The work itself spanned nearly an hour in its initial form, a departure from the 3-minute jazz pieces that were the industry standard. This immense scope allowed Ellington to explore a breadth of themes and emotions, using the full palette of his orchestra to paint a vivid sonic tapestry. Ellington's narrative intent was explicit. He aimed to present a dignified and comprehensive musical chronicle of Black American life, divided into 3 main movements. Black depicted the journey from Africa, the hardships of slavery, and the emergence of spirituals. Brown focused on the post-emancipation era, the contributions of Black Americans to the nation, including their participation in wars and the development of secular folk forms. Finally, Beige represented the contemporary Black American experience, celebrating the cultural achievements and aspirations of the Harlem Renaissance and beyond. The composition was a monumental undertaking, showcasing Ellington's evolving aspirations as a serious composer beyond the confines of popular dance music. It allowed his individual musicians to shine within an extended framework, weaving their distinctive voices into the larger narrative. However, the critical reception at the time was notably mixed. Many jazz critics, accustomed to the shorter, more improvisational forms, found the piece too long and structurally unconventional. Some classical music critics, unfamiliar with jazz idioms, struggle to categorize or fully appreciate its innovative fusion of forms and emotional depth. There was an expectation for it to adhere more strictly to either jazz or classical conventions, and Black, Brown, and Beige defied easy categorization. While some recognized its profound ambition and historical significance, and others expressed reservations about its coherence and overall impact. Despite the varied initial response, Ellington remained steadfast in his belief in the work's importance, continuing to perform excerpts and revise sections over the years, solidifying its place as a cornerstone of his legacy and a pioneering effort in extended jazz composition. As the Second World War concluded, a palpable shift began to ripple through the American musical landscape, signalling the twilight of the big band era. The widespread popularity that swing orchestras had enjoyed throughout the late 1930s and early 1940s began to wane, giving way to new sounds and evolving cultural preferences. This decline was not sudden, but a gradual process influenced by a confluence of factors, both economic and artistic, and one significant element was the changing taste of the public. The energetic, dance-oriented swing music, while still appreciated, started to face competition from more intimate, vocal-driven styles. Crooners and smaller vocal groups began to capture the attention of audiences, offering a different kind of musical experience that often required fewer musicians and simpler arrangements. The large, elaborate big bands, with their extensive personnel and complex charts, became less economically viable for many venues. Economic pressures further exacerbated the situation. The costs associated with maintaining a large touring orchestra were considerable, including salaries for many musicians, transportation, and accommodations. Union fees and rising expenses made it increasingly difficult for many band leaders to keep their ensembles afloat. The federal amusement tax imposed during the war remained in effect, adding another layer of financial strain on dance halls and clubs that featured live music. This tax often discouraged venue owners from booking large bands, favouring smaller, less expensive acts instead. Simultaneously, a new musical idiom was emerging from the vibrant late-night jam sessions in New York City: bebop. This innovative style, characterized by its faster tempos, complex harmonies, and intricate improvisations, represented a departure from the more accessible, danceable swing. Bebop was primarily an intellectual and artistic movement, appealing to a more niche audience of musicians and serious jazz enthusiasts rather than the mainstream public. Its focus on individual virtuosity and harmonic exploration often diminished the role of the large ensemble, favouring smaller combos. Amidst this widespread contraction of the big band scene, many orchestras disbanded entirely, their leaders either retiring or adapting to smaller formats. Yet, Duke Ellington's orchestra proved to be an exception. While facing the same economic and artistic headwinds, Ellington possessed a unique resilience and an unwavering commitment to his ensemble. His band, already known for its distinctive sound and the individual artistry of its members, was able to navigate these turbulent waters. Ellington's continuous compositional output, his willingness to explore new avenues, and his enduring artistic vision allowed his orchestra to persist, even as many of its contemporaries faded from prominence. This period marked a test of endurance, from which Ellington's ensemble would emerge, though not without its own challenges. The emergence of bebop presented a significant challenge to the established order of jazz, particularly for those deeply rooted in the swing tradition. This new idiom, with its harmonic complexities and rhythmic urgency, captured the imagination of a younger generation of musicians and listeners. Duke Ellington, ever a keen observer of the musical landscape, acknowledged these developments without succumbing to the pressure to entirely reinvent his orchestra in their image. He understood the innovations of bebop, yet his commitment remained firmly with his expansive orchestral vision. Ellington's approach was not one of outright rejection, nor was it one of wholesale adoption. Instead, he demonstrated a remarkable capacity for integration. He absorbed elements and ideas from the burgeoning bebop movement, subtly weaving them into the fabric of his own unique sound. This integration was often evident in the soloists he employed, some of whom were influenced by bebop's melodic and harmonic language. However, these modern inflections were always framed within Ellington's distinctive orchestral voicings and compositional structures, never overshadowing the core identity of his music. His genius lay in this ability to evolve without abandoning his foundational principles. Ellington's music had always been characterized by its rich textures, sophisticated harmonies, and a deep understanding of the individual voices within his ensemble. These qualities remained paramount. He continued to compose and arrange music that highlighted the unique timbres and improvisational talents of his long-standing musicians, many of whom were less inclined to embrace the rapid-fire complexities of bebop. By maintaining this balance, Ellington ensured the continued relevance of his orchestra. While many big bands struggled to adapt, finding themselves increasingly out of step with contemporary trends, Ellington managed to carve out a singular path. His music, while rooted in the swing era, never became entirely anachronistic. It possessed a timeless quality, allowing it to resonate with audiences across different stylistic preferences. He demonstrated that artistic progression did not necessarily demand a complete break from the past, but could instead involve a thoughtful assimilation of new ideas into an established and evolving framework. This period underscored Ellington's artistic independence. He was not swayed by fads or compelled to follow the latest trends blindly. His commitment was to his art, his orchestra, and his distinct musical language. This steadfastness, coupled with his openness to subtle innovation, allowed him to navigate the shifting currents of jazz history, ensuring that the Duke Ellington Orchestra remained a vital and influential force in American music, even as the broader big band era receded into memory. In the wake of World War II, the landscape for large musical ensembles shifted dramatically. The economic realities of maintaining a big band, always challenging, became increasingly burdensome. For Duke Ellington, the commitment to his orchestra was unwavering. Yet the practicalities of keeping such a large and complex entity together demanded constant vigilance and considerable personal sacrifice. The sheer number of musicians required meant a substantial payroll, and the expectation of fair wages for highly skilled artists placed considerable financial strain on the enterprise. The constant struggle for bookings was a pervasive concern. As public taste gravitated away from the big band sound towards smaller combos and vocalists, the demand for large orchestral engagements diminished. Venues that once readily hosted 15 or more musicians now found it more economically viable to feature smaller groups. This necessitated relentless touring, often through less glamorous circuits, simply to keep the orchestra working and the musicians employed. Travel expenses, equipment maintenance, and the logistical complexities of moving a large group of individuals across the country added further layers of difficulty to an already demanding schedule. Ellington bore the brunt of these financial and logistical pressures. He often subsidized the orchestra out of his own earnings, sometimes forgoing personal income to ensure his musicians were paid. His dedication to his ensemble was profound. He viewed them not merely as employees but as an extended family, and their collective sound as his primary artistic vehicle. This loyalty, however, came at a significant personal cost. The relentless travel, the late nights, the constant negotiation, and the persistent worry about finances exacted a heavy toll on his health and well-being. The personal toll on Ellington was multifaceted. The perpetual motion of touring meant long stretches away from home and family, a reality that characterized much of his adult life. The creative demands were also immense. He was not only leading the band but also continually composing, arranging, and adapting his music to suit changing circumstances and personnel. The weight of responsibility for so many individuals and for the preservation of a unique musical institution rested squarely on his shoulders. Despite these formidable challenges, Ellington persisted. His determination to keep his orchestra intact was a testament to his artistic vision and his deep belief in the power of his collective sound. He understood that the distinctive voice of the Duke Ellington Orchestra was not simply a collection of individual talents, but an intricate tapestry woven from their combined artistry. Preserving this unique entity became a central mission, even as the world around him seemed less and less inclined to support such grand musical endeavours. The continuous operation of his band through these leaner years stands as a testament to his resilience and unwavering dedication. By the mid-1950s, despite Ellington's unwavering dedication, his orchestra's popularity had waned somewhat. The relentless struggle to maintain the ensemble through difficult economic times had taken its toll, and the band was no longer consistently at the forefront of popular musical discourse. This period, however, was punctuated by a pivotal moment that would dramatically alter the trajectory of Ellington's later career: the 1956 Newport Jazz Festival. The performance at Newport was not initially expected to be a career-defining event. The band was scheduled to play late in the evening on July 7th, a slot that often meant a diminished audience and less critical attention. However, a series of delays pushed their set even later, into the early hours of the morning. As the crowd grew restless, a combination of factors, the late hour, the unexpected energy from the audience, and perhaps a certain sense of urgency from the band itself, conspired to create an atmosphere of heightened anticipation. Ellington, ever the showman, presented a programme that included both familiar pieces and some more adventurous selections. It was during the performance of an older composition, Diminuendo and Crescendo in Blue, that the legend truly began to unfold. This piece, originally conceived in the 1930s, and featured an extended saxophone solo bridging the two distinct sections. On this particular night, tenor saxophonist Paul Gonsalves embarked upon a solo that would become one of the most celebrated improvisations in jazz history. Gonsalves' solo was a sustained, electrifying outpouring of sound stretching for an unprecedented 27 choruses. It built gradually, with a hypnotic rhythmic intensity, captivating the late-night audience. As Gonsalves continued, The crowd, initially weary, began to stir. A ripple of excitement spread through the festival grounds, growing into a roar of approval. The sheer endurance and inventiveness of his playing seemed to ignite the entire venue. Ellington, observing the crowd's escalating enthusiasm, repeatedly gestured to Gonsalves to continue, a subtle affirmation of the moment's power. The impact of this performance was immediate and profound. The next day, news of the Newport triumph spread quickly. The recording of the concert, particularly Gonsalves' solo, became a landmark album, bringing Ellington's music to a new generation of listeners and reminding older fans of the band's enduring vitality. Time magazine featured Ellington on its cover, proclaiming "Duke is back." The Newport performance effectively reignited Ellington's career, cementing his status as a timeless figure in jazz, and demonstrating that even after decades, his orchestra possessed an unparalleled ability to captivate and innovate. This pivotal moment provided a renewed impetus, propelling the orchestra into a new era of global recognition and creative output. The immediate aftermath of the Newport Jazz Festival in 1956 brought about a palpable shift in the fortunes of Duke Ellington and his orchestra. The critical and popular acclaim generated by that electrifying performance infused the band with a renewed sense of purpose and energy. This period marked the beginning of another remarkable chapter in Ellington's long and illustrious career, characterized by an invigorated creative output and an unprecedented level of international engagement. New recording contracts quickly followed the Newport triumph. Major labels, recognizing the renewed commercial viability of Ellington's work, offered opportunities to document the orchestra's diverse repertoire. This led to a prolific period of recording, producing albums that captured the band's dynamic live sound and showcased Ellington's continued evolution as a composer and arranger. These recordings not only preserved the legacy of the orchestra, but also introduced their music to a wider audience, solidifying their place in the evolving jazz landscape. Beyond the recording studio, the orchestra embarked on extensive international tours, a testament to their heightened global appeal. These tours were more than just musical performances. They were cultural exchanges, positioning Duke Ellington and his musicians as unofficial ambassadors of American culture and, specifically, of jazz. The State Department, recognizing the power of music as a diplomatic tool during the Cold War era, sponsored several of these tours. This governmental backing provided Ellington's orchestra with unparalleled opportunities to perform in diverse regions of the world, from Europe and the Middle East to Asia and Latin America. The orchestra's arrival in these foreign lands was often met with immense enthusiasm. Audiences, sometimes unfamiliar with the intricacies of jazz, were captivated by the band's sophisticated arrangements, the individual virtuosity of its members, and Ellington's charismatic stage presence. He possessed a unique ability to connect with people regardless of language barriers, using his music as a universal communicator. Through these travels, Ellington became a truly global figure, his name synonymous with the highest artistic standards of American music. These extensive tours not only broadened the band's fan base, but also profoundly influenced Ellington's creative sensibilities. Exposure to different cultures, musical traditions, and societal rhythms inevitably found its way into his compositions. He began to incorporate elements and inspirations from his travels into new works, further enriching his already vast musical palette. This period of sustained international acclaim and continuous artistic exploration reaffirmed Ellington's enduring genius, proving that his music was not merely a reflection of its time, but a timeless expression of human experience, capable of transcending borders and generations. His status as a global ambassador of jazz was not merely a title, but a lived reality, woven into the very fabric of his later career. With the renewed vigour of the late 1950s, Duke Ellington began to explore compositional avenues beyond the traditional concert stage and recording studio. This era saw his significant ventures into the realm of film scores and theatrical productions, allowing him to apply his unique orchestral voice to new narrative contexts. These projects presented both fresh challenges and exciting opportunities for artistic expansion, pushing the boundaries of his compositional scope. One notable cinematic undertaking was the score for Otto Preminger's 1959 courtroom drama, Anatomy of a Murder. This marked a significant milestone, as it was one of the first major Hollywood films to feature a non-diegetic score composed entirely by African-American musicians. Ellington immersed himself in the film's narrative, and crafting music that subtly underscored the psychological tension and moral ambiguities of the story. His score for Anatomy of a Murder departed from the more overt jazz idioms often associated with his orchestra, demonstrating his versatility in creating mood music that served the film's dramatic arc. The music was understated yet potent, weaving through scenes with a sophisticated blend of bluesy introspection and dramatic flair, earning critical acclaim and a Grammy Award. Following this success, Ellington contributed to the score for the 1961 film Paris Blues, a romantic drama set against the backdrop of the Parisian jazz scene, starring Paul Newman and Sidney Poitier. While Paris Blues allowed for a more direct application of his jazz sensibilities, it still required a different approach than his concert works. He composed themes that captured the romanticism of the setting and the struggles of the characters, integrating his orchestral sound with the narrative flow of the film. These cinematic endeavours demanded a specific kind of compositional discipline, requiring Ellington to tailor his musical ideas to visual cues and narrative pacing, a departure from the self-contained nature of his standalone pieces. Simultaneously, Ellington continued to engage with theatrical works. While his earlier forays into extended forms like Black, Brown and Beige had strong narrative undertones, these new theatrical projects often involved more direct collaboration with playwrights and directors. He experimented with different structures and dramatic interpretations, exploring how his music could enhance storytelling in a live staged environment. These theatrical commissions offered a platform to explore character development and thematic arcs through sound, allowing for a more deliberate integration of music and drama than in his earlier works. These ventures into film and theatre were not merely commercial enterprises, they were artistic explorations. They compelled Ellington to think about music in relation to external narratives and visual elements, broadening his understanding of how his compositions could function in different artistic ecosystems. This period demonstrated his unwavering commitment to innovation and his remarkable ability to adapt his distinctive musical language to diverse creative demands, proving that his artistic vision was far from exhausted. The revitalization of Duke Ellington's career in the late 1950s, coupled with his explorations in film and theatre, fueled a renewed drive towards ambitious, extended compositional forms. This period saw the creation of several remarkable suites, each a testament to his evolving artistic vision and his continuous exploration of musical narrative. These works moved beyond the shorter, individual pieces that had long been a staple of his repertoire, embracing larger structures and thematic unity. One of the most celebrated of these creations was Such Sweet Thunder, a suite inspired by the works of William Shakespeare, conceived in 1957. This collection of 12 pieces offered musical portraits of characters and scenes from Shakespearean plays and sonnets. Each movement, such as Lady Mac, Up and Down, I Fall on My Knees, and Madness in Great Ones, captured a specific essence, not through literal interpretation, but through Ellington's distinct harmonic and melodic language. The suite allowed him to weave together a tapestry of emotions and personalities, demonstrating his capacity to translate literary themes into a unique orchestral jazz idiom. It was a sophisticated melding of high art and jazz, presented with Ellington's characteristic wit and elegance. A more intimate and exclusive project was the Queen's Suite, composed in 1958. This suite was created as a personal gift for Queen Elizabeth II, following a meeting during Ellington's European tour. Only one copy of the recording was pressed, given directly to the Queen, and it remained unreleased to the public for many years. This private offering underscores Ellington's respect for royalty and his deep personal connection to his art. The suite itself, comprising 6 movements, was a delicate and refined work, showcasing his ability to craft music that was both grand and deeply personal, reflecting the dignity and grace of its intended recipient. The Far East Suite, conceived during a State Department-sponsored tour of the Middle East and Asia in 1963, represents another pinnacle of his extended compositions. Released in 1967, this suite was a direct musical response to the diverse cultures and sounds Ellington encountered during his travels. Pieces like Isfahan, Bluebird of Delhi, Mina, and Mount Harissa did not merely imitate regional music, but rather filtered the impressions and atmospheres of these locales through Ellington's distinct musical lens. The suite captured the exoticism and beauty of the distant lands, integrating new scales, rhythms, and instrumental colours into the Ellingtonian sound, without ever losing its fundamental jazz identity. It was an homage to global interconnectedness, expressed through the universal language of music. These extended works, from the literary inspirations of Such Sweet Thunder to the global echoes of the Far East Suite, collectively illustrate Duke Ellington's continuous evolution as a composer. They underscore his persistent drive to explore complex themes and narratives, moving beyond the confines of individual songs to create cohesive, multi-movement artistic statements. Even as Duke Ellington pursued his grander compositional projects, he also engaged in significant recording collaborations with other towering figures of jazz, creating unique musical dialogues that extended his artistic reach and highlighted his adaptable genius. And these encounters were not mere jam sessions, but carefully considered artistic pairings, designed to explore new textures and blend distinct musical personalities. The resulting albums stand as important documents of jazz history, demonstrating the profound mutual respect among these masters. One such notable collaboration was with Louis Armstrong, recorded in 1961. Titled The Great Summit, The Master Takes. This album brought together 2 foundational architects of jazz, figures who had shaped the music across different eras and styles. Armstrong, with his vibrant trumpet and unmistakable vocal timbre, represented an earlier, more spontaneous tradition, while Ellington, with his sophisticated arrangements and orchestral palette, embodied a more composed and deliberate approach. Yet, on this recording, their distinct voices blended seamlessly. Ellington's piano provided elegant accompaniment, and he reimagined some of his classic compositions, such as Mood Indigo and Inner Mellowtone, to feature Armstrong's unique interpretations. The sessions were marked by an atmosphere of camaraderie and deep musical understanding, proving that stylistic differences could dissolve in the presence of shared artistry. A strikingly different, yet equally compelling collaboration occurred with John Coltrane in 1962. This pairing brought together the established master of orchestral jazz with one of the most innovative and ascendant figures of modal and avant-garde jazz. The album, simply titled Duke Ellington and John Coltrane, presented a fascinating study in contrasts and commonalities. Coltrane, and known for his intense improvisational excursions and searching sound, met Ellington's elegant, often understated piano playing and arrangements. Rather than attempting to force Coltrane into the traditional Ellingtonian mould, the sessions allowed for a more open exchange. Ellington provided a spacious backdrop for Coltrane's explorations, and Coltrane in turn adapted his powerful saxophone voice to the more melodic and harmonic language of Ellington's compositions, as well as some new pieces. The result was a surprisingly harmonious blend, demonstrating Ellington's willingness to engage with contemporary sounds and Coltrane's respect for the foundational traditions. Another significant collaboration involved bassist and composer Charles Mingus, alongside drummer Max Roach, on the 1962 album Money Jungle. This trio recording was an intense and often challenging musical conversation. Mingus, a formidable composer and bandleader in his own right, brought a raw, passionate energy and a complex harmonic sensibility. The dynamic interplay between Ellington's piano, Mingus's bass, and Roach's drums was electrifying. The music was spontaneous, sometimes confrontational, yet always deeply musical. Ellington, stepping away from the comfort of his orchestra, demonstrated his prowess as an improviser in a small group setting, engaging directly with two of the most powerful and individualistic voices in modern jazz. Money Jungle stands as a testament to Ellington's adventurous spirit and his ability to thrive in challenging musical environments, proving his enduring relevance across generations of jazz innovation. These collaborations collectively highlight Ellington's remarkable versatility and his openness to engaging with diverse musical personalities. They allowed him to explore new sonic landscapes, enriching his own artistry while leaving behind a legacy of unique and powerful musical statements. While Duke Ellington was not known for overt political activism or participation in protest marches, his entire career, his personal conduct, and his artistic output constituted a profound and consistent statement against racial injustice and for black dignity. His approach to civil rights was embedded in his very existence as an accomplished black artist, operating at the highest echelons of global culture. He demonstrated, through his unwavering excellence and elegant demeanour, the inherent worth and creative genius of African Americans at a time when such affirmations were desperately needed. Ellington's quiet authority and sophisticated presentation challenged prevailing stereotypes. He carried himself with an innate regality, earning him the lifelong moniker Duke. This self-possession was, in itself, a form of resistance against a society that often sought to diminish black individuals. He insisted on respect, both for himself and for his musicians, often refusing to perform in venues where his band members would be subjected to segregation or discriminatory treatment. These quiet stands, though not always publicized, sent clear messages about his principles and the value he placed on human dignity. His music, too, served as a powerful form of social commentary, from his early extended works like Black, Brown and Beige, conceived as a tone parallel to the history of the American Negro. Ellington consistently wove themes of racial pride, struggle, and aspiration into his compositions. Black, Brown and Beige, first performed in 1943, was an ambitious attempt to narrate the African American experience through music, from the arrival of enslaved Africans to the contributions of black soldiers in American wars. It was a monumental artistic declaration of identity and historical significance. In the mid-1960s, as the civil rights movement gained significant momentum, Ellington continued to address these themes, often with increasing directness. His 1963 musical production, My People, was a particularly potent example. Commissioned for the Century of Negro Progress exposition in Chicago, celebrating 100 years since the Emancipation Proclamation, My People was a vibrant and celebratory exploration of black life and culture. It included spirituals, blues, gospel, and jazz, with spoken word segments and dance, all celebrating the resilience, joy, and contributions of African Americans. The piece featured songs like King Fit the Battle of Alabama, a reference to the Birmingham campaign, and What Color is Virtue, directly engaging with the contemporary struggle for equality. Through My People and other works, Ellington articulated a message of self-affirmation and pride, advocating for racial uplift not through explicit political slogans, but through the undeniable beauty and power of his art. He understood that presenting black culture with elegant sophistication and profound artistic integrity was a potent form of advocacy. His refusal to be confined by racial limitations, his insistence on artistic freedom, and his consistent portrayal of black life with dignity and depth were all integral to his subtle yet firm stance on civil rights, making his entire career a testament to racial equality and human excellence. In 1965, a new and profoundly personal chapter began in Duke Ellington's compositional life, marked by the genesis of his sacred concerts. These works represented a deeply felt spiritual journey, a unique expression of his faith through the language of jazz. For Ellington, music was not merely entertainment. It was a medium through which he could articulate the deepest human emotions and ultimately his understanding of the divine. He often stated that his most important work was yet to come, and these sacred pieces performed in hallowed spaces embodied that aspiration. The invitation to compose and perform a sacred concert came from Grace Cathedral in San Francisco, which sought a work for its 10th anniversary celebration. Ellington embraced this opportunity with profound seriousness. He had always held a deep, though often privately expressed spiritual conviction, nurtured since his youth. This project allowed him to bring his formidable musical genius into direct conversation with his faith, creating a new genre of sacred jazz that defied conventional categories. He believed that every man prayed in his own language, and his language was music. The first sacred concert, titled In the Beginning God, premiered on September 16, 1965, at Grace Cathedral. It was a monumental undertaking, blending elements of traditional jazz, gospel, blues, and classical forms, performed by his orchestra, a vocal choir, and guest soloists. The music was designed to be both reverent and celebratory, reflecting the various facets of spiritual experience. Pieces like Come Sunday and David Danced Before the Lord with All His Might became central to this new liturgical expression, demonstrating Ellington's ability to imbue sacred texts and themes with his distinctive harmonic and rhythmic sensibility. The performances of the sacred concerts were not confined to the traditional concert hall. By design, they were presented within churches and cathedrals around the world, transforming these sacred spaces into venues for a unique form of worship and artistic expression. This choice of setting was deliberate, and underscoring Ellington's intention to create music that transcended secular boundaries and spoke directly to the spiritual core of humanity. The acoustics of these grand old buildings lent a particular resonance to the intricate harmonies and powerful improvisations of the orchestra, creating an immersive and often moving experience for the audiences. Ellington would go on to compose 2 more sacred concerts. The second sacred concert, Praise God and Dance, which premiered in 1968 at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in New York City, and the third sacred concert, The Majesty of God, first performed in 1973 at Westminster Abbey in London. Each concert further explored his spiritual themes, incorporating new compositions and arrangements while maintaining the foundational blend of jazz and reverence. These works represented a culmination of Ellington's lifelong artistic and personal journey, a deeply personal offering of his gifts in service of a higher purpose. Through these concerts, he sought to unify people through music, offering a message of hope, faith, and the universal language of sound. The sacred concerts, beyond their specific musical forms, carried a profound message that resonated with Duke Ellington's lifelong philosophy. These compositions were not merely a collection of tunes, they were an intentional articulation of faith, a celebration of human dignity, and a call for unity. Ellington believed that music held a unique power to transcend barriers, and in these works he sought to bridge divides between the sacred and the secular, between different musical traditions, and between people of varying beliefs. Musically, although the concerts represented a daring synthesis, Ellington seamlessly wove together the improvisational spirit of jazz with the emotive power of gospel music and the structural grandeur of classical forms. His orchestra, always his primary instrument, demonstrated its remarkable versatility, moving from swinging passages to lush, orchestral textures, and then to moments of tender reflection. The incorporation of vocal soloists and choirs added another dimension, allowing for the direct expression of spiritual texts and hymns, often reinterpreted through Ellington's distinctive harmonic lens. The familiar sound of a blues inflection could be heard alongside a classical fugue, all unified by Ellington's unmistakable compositional voice. Themes of creation, praise, redemption, and the universal brotherhood of man permeated the sacred concerts. In the Beginning, God, the title of the first concert, encapsulated a fundamental belief in a divine origin for all existence. Pieces like Heaven and Almighty God offered direct expressions of reverence, while others, such as David Dance Before the Lord with All His Might, evoked joyful and uninhibited praise. Ellington also included narratives and spoken word elements, often delivered by himself, adding a personal and reflective dimension to the performances, guiding the audience through the spiritual landscape he'd created. A significant thread running through the sacred concerts was the affirmation of human dignity, particularly that of African Americans. Ellington had always used his music to uplift and celebrate black culture and history, and these concerts extended that mission into a spiritual realm. They asserted that all individuals, regardless of race or background, possessed inherent worth in the eyes of the divine. This message of inclusivity and inherent value was subtly, yet powerfully embedded within the music, aligning with his consistent efforts throughout his career to combat prejudice through artistic excellence and unwavering grace. Ultimately, the sacred concerts were Ellington's grand testament to his spiritual convictions and his enduring belief in the power of music to inspire, console, and unite. They were a deeply personal offering, yet their message was universal, inviting listeners to contemplate their own faith and humanity within a framework of rich, diverse sound. These works stand as a unique and profound contribution to both jazz and sacred music, thus demonstrating the boundless scope of Ellington's artistic vision. Beyond the public persona of the suave bandleader and innovative composer, Duke Ellington's personal life was characterized by a complex interplay of relationships and a profound need for both connection and private contemplation. His early marriage to Edna Thompson, while producing his only son Mercer, eventually gave way to a less conventional domestic arrangement. Throughout his extensive travels and demanding career, Ellington cultivated a series of significant relationships with women, each providing different forms of companionship, inspiration, and stability amidst the constant motion of his professional life. These relationships were often sustained by a delicate balance, reflecting the unique demands of his existence on the road. He maintained a certain distance, a gentlemanly reserve that allowed him to navigate his personal affections while remaining intensely dedicated to his music. The women in his life understood to varying degrees that his primary devotion was to his art and his orchestra. They provided comfort, managed aspects of his personal affairs, and offered emotional anchors in a life that was otherwise perpetually in motion. Among these connections, his relationship with Fernanda de Castromonte stands out for its longevity and depth. Fernanda, a former dancer, became Ellington's constant companion for the latter half of his life, a presence of quiet strength and understanding. She travelled with him extensively, providing a sense of home and familiarity wherever the road might lead. Their bond was characterized by mutual respect and affection, a stable point in a world of constant change. Fernanda understood the rhythms of his life, the relentless schedule and the profound solitude that often accompanies creative genius. She offered a comforting presence without demanding the entirety of his attention, recognizing the space he required for composition and reflection. Indeed, despite his gregarious public image and the constant presence of his band, Ellington possessed a deep need for solitude. It was in these quiet moments, often late at night in hotel rooms or on long train journeys, that he composed, thought, and recentered himself. This solitude was not loneliness, but a necessary condition for his creative process, a space where his rich inner world could unfold and transform into music. He was a man who thrived on interaction, yet equally required periods of withdrawal to nourish his artistic soul. His relationships, therefore, existed in a delicate equilibrium with this inner need for quiet. They provided the human connection and emotional support that grounded him, while also respecting the boundaries that allowed him the private space essential for his extraordinary output. It was this intricate balance between the public and private, the communal and the solitary, that defined the personal landscape of Duke Ellington. In 1967, the world of Duke Ellington, both personal and professional, was profoundly shaken by the death of Billy Strayhorn. This loss represented more than the passing of a colleague. It was the end of a unique and deeply intertwined creative partnership, a friendship that had spanned nearly 3 decades and shaped the very sound of the Ellington Orchestra. Strayhorn, often affectionately known as Swee P, had been Ellington's alter ego, his musical confidant, and a prolific composer and arranger in his own right. Their collaboration, which began in 1939, was extraordinary in its synergy. Strayhorn's lyrical sensibility and sophisticated harmonic language blended seamlessly with Ellington's grander vision, often to the point where distinguishing their individual contributions became a subtle art. Pieces like Take the A Train, Lush Life, and Chelsea Bridge were just a few of the masterpieces born from Strayhorn's pen, enriching the Ellington repertoire and cementing his place as an indispensable force behind the band's golden era. Their working relationship was characterized by mutual respect, a shared aesthetic, and an unspoken understanding that allowed for a remarkable flow of ideas between them. The impact of Strayhorn's passing, after a long battle with esophageal cancer, was devastating for Ellington. He had lost not only a brilliant musical mind, but also a dear friend, a quiet presence who understood him perhaps better than anyone else in his professional life. The grief was palpable, and Ellington channeled his sorrow and admiration into a deeply personal and moving musical tribute. This tribute took the form of the album, and His Mother Called Him Bill, released later in 1967. It was an album entirely dedicated to Strayhorn's compositions, performed by the Ellington Orchestra with a profound sense of reverence and melancholy. Each track was a meditation on Strayhorn's genius, a gentle exploration of his melodies and harmonies, imbued with the collective sorrow and affection of the musicians who had worked alongside him for so many years. Ellington himself contributed a solo piano rendition of Strayhorn's Lotus Blossom, a particularly poignant moment on the album conveying a quiet, introspective grief that transcended words. The creation of And His Mother Called Him Bill was more than just a memorial. It was a testament to the enduring power of their artistic bond. It allowed Ellington to process his loss and to ensure that Strayhorn's musical legacy would continue to resonate, woven inextricably into the fabric of the orchestra's sound. The album stands as a quiet, authoritative statement on the profound influence one artist can have on another, and the deep emotional resonance that can arise from such a unique collaboration. As the decades progressed and the years accumulated, the relentless pace of Duke Ellington's professional life began to exert a noticeable toll. His commitment to constant performance, composition, and travel, a dedication that had defined his existence for over 50 years, became increasingly challenging as he entered his later 60s and early 70s. The sheer physical demands of perpetually being on the road, moving from city to city, country to country, began to wear upon his constitution. Each day brought new airports, different hotels, unfamiliar stages, and the continuous cycle of rehearsals, sound checks, and performances, often late into the night. The glamour of international tours, while musically fulfilling, indeed was underpinned by a demanding itinerary that offered little respite. Long flights across time zones, bus journeys between engagements, and the constant packing and unpacking of luggage contributed to a cumulative exhaustion. Sleep, when it came, was often fragmented and disturbed by the unfamiliarity of new surroundings. Mentally, the pressure remained immense. Ellington was not merely a band leader, he was the primary composer, the arranger, the public face, and the business mind orchestrating the vast enterprise that was the Duke Ellington Orchestra. He carried the weight of responsibility for his musicians, ensuring their livelihoods and maintaining the high, artistic standards that had become his hallmark. This required sustained mental acuity, even when physical energy waned. The creative impulse, while still strong, had to contend with the persistent fatigue that accompanied such a taxing lifestyle. Despite these growing challenges, Ellington's commitment to his music and his band remained unwavering. It was a commitment born of profound passion and a deep sense of purpose. The orchestra was his extended family, his primary vehicle for artistic expression, and he felt an immense obligation to keep it thriving. He believed in the power of his music to uplift, to entertain, and to convey deeper truths, and this conviction fueled his perseverance. He would often compose on the move, finding moments of quiet creativity amidst the chaos of travel. Hotel rooms became temporary studios, airplane trays makeshift desks where musical ideas would be jotted down. This constant engagement with his craft was not simply a habit. It was an intrinsic part of his being, a vital force that transcended the physical discomfort and the mental strain. The challenges of aging and constant travel were simply further obstacles to be navigated in his lifelong pursuit of musical excellence. In his later years, as the physical demands of his career mounted, Duke Ellington began to receive a more comprehensive and formal recognition of his profound artistic contributions. While his genius had long been celebrated by musicians and discerning audiences worldwide, the establishment in its various forms started to bestow upon him a series of prestigious awards and honours, acknowledging the monumental scope of his work. This recognition, though in some cases belated, underscored the undeniable impact he had made on American and global culture. Among the most distinguished accolades was the Presidential Medal of Freedom, presented to him by President Richard Nixon in 1969. This civilian honour, the highest in the United States, was a powerful affirmation of his role not only as a musician, but as a cultural ambassador and a figure of national significance. The ceremony itself was a moment of quiet triumph, acknowledging a lifetime dedicated to artistic excellence and innovation. Universities across the nation and beyond also began to grant him honorary doctorates, recognizing his intellectual rigor and the academic depth of his compositions. Yale University, Brown University, and Howard University were among the many institutions that conferred these distinctions, elevating his status from a popular entertainer to a revered scholar of music. Only these degrees were not merely ceremonial, they were a testament to the complex structures, harmonic sophistication, and thematic richness embedded within his vast oeuvre, which merited serious academic study. The recording industry too paid its respects through numerous Grammy Awards. Over his career, Ellington accumulated a significant number of these coveted trophies, often for his later works and for historical recordings. These awards spanned various categories, from Best Jazz Performance to Lifetime Achievement, illustrating the breadth of his influence and the enduring quality of his music. They served as tangible markers of his sustained relevance and continued artistic vitality, even as new forms of music emerged. Beyond these prominent awards, countless other tributes arrived in the form of keys to cities, proclamations, and special events dedicated to his legacy. These gestures collectively painted a picture of a man whose artistry transcended genres and generations, earning him a unique place in the pantheon of American cultural figures. The recognition, while arriving in his twilight years, affirmed that his tireless work, his innovative spirit, and his unwavering dedication to his unique musical vision had indeed shaped the soundscape of the 20th century, cementing his status as an undisputed master. Despite the accumulating weight of age, the relentless travel, and the increasing health challenges that shadowed his final decade, Duke Ellington's creative spirit remained remarkably undimmed. His passion for music, a driving force throughout his life, propelled him forward with an almost superhuman resolve. He continued to compose with an intensity that belied his physical state, transforming his experiences and observations into new musical narratives. The piano, ever his sanctuary and his instrument of revelation, remained central to his daily existence, its keys often pressed in the quiet hours of the night or in the brief respites between engagements. The orchestra, his extended family and his primary vehicle for expression, remained active, performing an almost ceaseless schedule of concerts and tours. From grand symphony halls to more intimate club settings, Ellington and his musicians journeyed across continents, bringing his distinctive sound to eager audiences. Each performance was not merely a repetition of past glories, but an opportunity for new interpretations, subtle improvisations, and the presentation of fresh material. He often premiered new compositions during these concerts, testing their reception and refining their nuances in real time. His commitment to touring was unwavering, a testament to his belief in the direct connection between performer and listener. He understood that music was a living entity, meant to be experienced in the moment, shared in a collective space. Even as exhaustion became a more constant companion and the physical act of travel grew more arduous, he rarely curtailed his schedule. The road was his office, his studio, and his stage, and he embraced its demands with a stoic grace. Recordings continued to be made, capturing the evolving sound of the band and the fertile imagination of its leader. These late-period albums, though sometimes overshadowed by his earlier masterpieces, have still offered glimpses of his undiminished genius, showcasing his continued exploration of harmonic possibilities and his knack for crafting memorable melodies. There was no sense of resting on past laurels. Instead, a persistent forward momentum characterized his artistic output. Even as his health entered a more precarious phase, marked by hospitalizations and increasing physical discomfort, his mind remained sharp, his musical ideas flowing. He would often compose from his hospital bed, dictating notes or sketching ideas, his thoughts perpetually orbiting around the next piece, the next arrangement, the next performance. This unwavering dedication to his art, even in the face of inevitable decline, underscored the profound depth of his commitment, revealing music not merely as a profession, but as the very essence of his being. Yet his creative flame burned brightly until the very end, a testament to an extraordinary life lived in service of sound. The early 1970s brought with them a gradual but perceptible shift in Duke Ellington's physical vitality. The relentless pace of his life, a constant cycle of travel, performance and creation, had begun to exact a heavier toll. Though he maintained his characteristic composure and outwardly projected an image of indefatigable energy, the subtle signs of decline became more apparent to those closest to him. The long hours, the irregular sleep, and the cumulative stress of decades on the road began to manifest in more significant ways. In 1973, a diagnosis of lung cancer was made, a sobering reality that contrasted sharply with his lifelong pursuit of beauty and joy through music. This news was met with a quiet determination, characteristic of Ellington's approach to all challenges. He chose to face this illness with the same resilience that had guided him through countless professional obstacles and personal losses. The diagnosis did not immediately halt his creative output or his touring schedule. Rather, it seemed to intensify his resolve to continue working, to continue sharing his gift with the world for as long as he was able. His work ethic, legendary even in his youth, remained remarkably strong. Even as he underwent treatments and experienced the associated discomforts, his mind remained focused on his music. He would often receive visitors and conduct business from his hospital room, turning these spaces, however temporary, into extensions of his creative sphere. Scores were reviewed, arrangements discussed, and new melodies hummed, demonstrating an unwavering commitment that transcended his physical suffering. The demanding schedule of performances and recordings continued, albeit with adjustments made to accommodate his diminishing strength. He would often rely more heavily on his trusted sidemen, allowing them to carry certain sections of the performance while he conserved his energy. Yet, when he sat at the piano, or when he conducted the orchestra, a profound transformation would occur. The music seemed to re-energize him, drawing forth reserves of strength that belied his ailing condition. His public appearances became imbued with a deeper poignancy. Audiences, often unaware of the full extent of his health struggles, continued to marvel at his enduring artistry. For those who knew, there was an added layer of admiration for his courage and his unwavering dedication to his craft. The decline was gradual, a slow ebbing of physical strength, but it never extinguished the bright flame of his musical genius. He approached his final years with a quiet dignity, continuing to create and perform, demonstrating until the very end the profound power of music to sustain the human spirit. Even as his physical strength waned, Duke Ellington's creative spirit remained undiminished, driving him towards his final public appearances and recording sessions. The music was an intrinsic part of his being, a language he spoke fluently until his very last days. His final concert performances, though marked by a noticeable frailty, still carried the unmistakable brilliance and elegance that had defined his career. He would often need assistance to reach the piano, but once seated, his hands would move with a familiar grace, coaxing vibrant harmonies and intricate rhythms from the keys. One of his last significant performances took place in March 1973 at the White House, a testament to his enduring stature and the profound respect he commanded. Though visibly unwell, he conducted with his customary flair, demonstrating a resilience that inspired awe in those who witnessed it. Each note, each phrase, seemed to carry a heightened significance, a quiet declaration of his lifelong dedication to his art. The recording studio also remained a vital space for him. Even in the midst of his illness, he continued to oversee sessions, meticulously shaping the sound and ensuring that every nuance was captured. His final album, Eastbourne Performance, recorded live in England in December 1973, stands as a poignant document of his unwavering commitment. Despite his deteriorating health, the recording showcases the orchestra's enduring power and Ellington's continued ability to inspire and lead. The energy and precision captured on that album defy the difficult circumstances under which it was made. As his condition worsened, and he became confined to a hospital bed, the flow of musical ideas did not cease. His mind, ever fertile, continued to conceive new melodies, new arrangements, new sonic tapestries. He would often dictate notes and musical phrases to his son, Mercer, or to other trusted associates, ensuring that these fleeting inspirations were preserved. These moments underscore the depth of his devotion to music. It was not merely a profession, but an essential function of his existence, a continuous internal symphony that played on regardless of external circumstances. His bedside became a quiet workshop, a place where the sounds of his imagination were given form, even if only through spoken word or written annotation. The act of creation was a constant, a final affirmation of his identity as a musician and a composer. Until the very end, Duke Ellington remained inextricably linked to the world of sound, orchestrating his final compositions from a place of profound and enduring commitment. The final chords of Duke Ellington's Earthly Symphony faded on May 24, 1974. He passed away at the age of 75 in New York City after a prolonged battle with lung cancer and pneumonia. His departure marked not merely the end of a singular life, but the quiet conclusion of a monumental era in American music and culture. The news of his death rippled across the globe, eliciting an immediate and profound outpouring of grief and remembrance. From the highest echelons of government to the quiet corners of jazz clubs, tributes began to flow. Presidents, fellow musicians, critics, and countless admirers expressed their sorrow and acknowledged the immeasurable loss. Telegrams and messages arrived from heads of state, reflecting the international reverence he had earned throughout his extensive travels. His influence had transcended national borders, touching lives in every continent where his music had been heard. Musicians, both those who had played alongside him and those he had inspired from afar, spoke of his genius, his generosity, and his unwavering commitment to his art. They recalled his elegant demeanour, his quick wit, and the unparalleled sound he had meticulously crafted with his orchestra. Many acknowledged that the world of jazz would never quite be the same, for Ellington had not merely played the music, he had fundamentally shaped its direction and expanded its very definition. The obituaries published in newspapers worldwide were extensive, detailing his extraordinary career from his early days in Washington, D.C. to his global recognition as a titan of 20th century music. They chronicled his innovations in composition, his mastery of orchestration, and his tireless advocacy for racial dignity through artistic excellence. Each article underscored the profound impact he'd made, not just as an entertainer, but as a cultural ambassador and an enduring symbol of American creativity. His passing was indeed perceived as the end of an era. He had been a constant, innovative presence for over half a century, a figure whose artistic journey paralleled much of the 20th century's musical evolution. With his departure, a unique voice, one that had articulated the joys, sorrows, and complexities of the human experience through the language of jazz, was silenced. Yet even in the quiet sorrow of his passing, there was a collective understanding that his music, his legacy, would continue to resonate, echoing through time, an eternal testament to his enduring genius. In the immediate aftermath of Duke Ellington's passing, a wave of collective mourning and profound recognition swept through the musical world and beyond. The memorial services held for him were significant events, reflecting the vastness of his influence and the depth of affection he had inspired. The most prominent of these was held at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in New York City, a grand and fitting venue for a figure of his stature. Thousands gathered, filling the immense space, alongside countless more who stood outside, united in their desire to pay their respects. The eulogies delivered during these services were not merely formal pronouncements, but heartfelt testaments to his genius and character. Speakers from various walks of life, Musicians, politicians, spiritual leaders, and cultural figures shared anecdotes and reflections that painted a comprehensive portrait of the man and his artistry. They spoke of his elegance, his wit, his tireless dedication, and his unique ability to transcend musical genres while remaining firmly rooted in the spirit of jazz. The Reverend John Gensel, often referred to as the jazz pastor, delivered a particularly moving address, emphasizing Ellington's spiritual depth and his profound connection to humanity through his compositions. Beyond the formal ceremonies, the media landscape was saturated with tributes. Newspapers and magazines across the globe dedicated extensive space to retrospective articles, analyses of his musical contributions and personal recollections. Radio stations played his timeless compositions for extended periods, allowing listeners to immerse themselves in his vast discography. Television networks aired special programs featuring archival footage of his performances and interviews to reacquainting audiences with his charismatic presence and his enduring legacy. This widespread recognition underscored the monumental nature of his contributions. Critics lauded his innovations in orchestration and harmony, his pioneering work in extended forms, and his singular ability to write for individual musicians, making his orchestra sound like no other. Historians emphasized his role as a cultural icon who, through his artistry, had consistently challenged racial prejudices and elevated the perception of black culture on a global stage. His music was celebrated not just as entertainment, but as a sophisticated artistic expression that spoke to the complexities of the human spirit. The aftermath of his death thus became a period of collective reflection, a historical moment when the world paused to fully comprehend the magnitude of the legacy Duke Ellington had left behind. It was a time when the echoes of his genius, already pervasive, grew louder still, affirming his indelible place in the pantheon of artistic giants. In the wake of Duke Ellington's passing, a natural question arose concerning the future of the orchestra he had so meticulously built and led for half a century. The ensemble, a living embodiment of his musical vision, could not simply cease to exist. It was in this moment that his son, Mercer Ellington, stepped forward to assume the mantle of leadership. Mercer, who had been an integral part of his father's organisation for many years, serving as a trumpeter, composer, arranger and road manager, possessed an intimate understanding of the band's repertoire, its sound, and its unique chemistry. Mercer Ellington's decision to continue leading the Duke Ellington Orchestra was a pivotal one, ensuring that the maestro's music would not fade into history, but would instead continue to resonate in live performance. He inherited a formidable legacy, along with the responsibility of preserving its authenticity, while also navigating the evolving landscape of popular music. Under his direction, the orchestra embarked on a new chapter, committed to performing the vast catalogue of his father's compositions for audiences around the world. This continuation was not without its challenges. The big band era, as it had been known, was largely a thing of the past, and the musical tastes of new generations were shifting. Yet Mercer understood the timeless appeal of his father's work. He meticulously maintained the integrity of the arrangements, often utilising musicians who had played with Duke himself, thereby preserving the distinctive Ellingtonian sound. He ensured that the nuances, the precise voicings, and the individualistic solos that characterised the orchestra's performances remained intact. Under Mercer's leadership, the Duke Ellington Orchestra toured extensively, bringing the iconic sounds of Take the A Train, Mood Indigo, Satin Doll, and countless other masterpieces to concert halls, festivals, and educational institutions. This commitment allowed younger audiences, who had never had the chance to witness Duke Ellington in person, to experience the power and sophistication of his music performed by an ensemble directly connected to its origins. Mercer's tenure ensured a vital link, bridging the past with the present and guaranteeing that the intricate tapestry of Duke Ellington's musical genius continued to be woven into the cultural fabric for new generations to discover and appreciate. His dedication became a testament to the enduring power of the music itself. Duke Ellington's influence on the very architecture of jazz composition remains one of his most profound and enduring legacies. He did not merely write tunes, he sculpted sound, crafting intricate musical landscapes that redefined the possibilities of the big band format. His approach to composition was distinct, moving far beyond the conventional arrangements of his contemporaries. One of Ellington's most significant innovations lay in his masterful use of harmony. He possessed an uncanny ability to deploy complex chords and unexpected voicings, creating rich, evocative textures that were both sophisticated and deeply expressive. These harmonic choices often lent his music a distinctive colour, a quality sometimes described as Ellingtonian. He explored dissonances and extended harmonies with a painter's eye, blending them in ways that were simultaneously challenging and effortlessly beautiful, pushing the boundaries of what was considered acceptable or even conceivable in jazz at the time. His rhythmic innovations were equally significant. While firmly rooted in the swing tradition, Ellington often experimented with rhythmic displacement, syncopation, and varied rhythmic groupings, injecting a subtle tension and propulsion into his compositions. He understood how to manipulate rhythmic energy, building intensity or creating moments of serene repose, set all within the fluid framework of a big band. This rhythmic sophistication contributed to the dynamic and ever-shifting character of his pieces, preventing them from ever becoming static or predictable. Perhaps most remarkably, Ellington was a pioneer in orchestration, treating his orchestra not as a collection of interchangeable parts, but as a palette of unique individual voices. He composed specifically for the strengths and tiavas of his individual musicians, tailoring parts to Johnny Hodges' alto saxophone, Cootie Williams' trumpet, or Lawrence Brown's trombone. This personalized approach to orchestration created a sound world where each instrument contributed its distinct character, blending into a cohesive whole while retaining its individual identity. He explored unusual instrument combinations, utilizing clarinets in their lower register, muted brass in novel ways, and the subtle interplay between sections to create a vast spectrum of tonal colors. Ellington also expanded the very form of jazz composition. While many jazz pieces adhered to the standard AABA song structure, he ventured into longer multi-sectional works and suites, such as Black, Brown and Beige, or Such Sweet Thunder. These extended compositions allowed him to develop musical ideas with greater breadth and depth, akin to classical symphonies, yet always imbued with the unmistakable spirit of jazz. He demonstrated that the big band could be a vehicle for serious, expansive artistic statements, elevating jazz from a dance music to a sophisticated art form, capable of expressing complex narratives and profound emotions. His legacy, therefore, is not merely a collection of beloved songs, but a blueprint for how jazz could be composed, arranged, and performed with an unparalleled degree of artistry and vision. Beyond his musical genius, Duke Ellington cultivated a profound role as a cultural ambassador, representing not only the evolving art form of jazz but also the rich tapestry of African American culture on a global stage. His travels, which spanned decades and continents, were not merely concert tours, they were diplomatic missions of art and identity. Ellington carried himself with an unparalleled dignity and sophistication that resonated deeply with audiences worldwide. In an era when racial prejudice often sought to diminish black excellence, Ellington presented an image of unassailable elegance and intellectual rigor. His impeccable attire, his articulate speech, and his composed demeanor projected an image of black artistry that commanded respect and admiration, challenging preconceived notions and broadening perceptions. He was, in essence, a walking testament to the refined capabilities of African American artists and thinkers. Through his music, Ellington transcended linguistic and cultural barriers. The universal language of his compositions, with their blend of joy, sorrow, introspection, and exuberance, communicated directly to the hearts of listeners from Tokyo to Timbuktu. He understood that music had the power to bridge divides, and he wielded this power with grace and purpose. When his orchestra performed in Europe, Asia, or South America, they were not just playing jazz, they were presenting a vibrant, sophisticated facet of American culture, and one that was deeply rooted in the African American experience. His tours were meticulously planned cultural exchanges, often supported by the US State Department during the Cold War. In these diplomatic capacities, Ellington's music served as a powerful counter-narrative to Soviet propaganda, showcasing American cultural diversity and artistic freedom. He navigated these complex political landscapes with an innate diplomacy, always focusing on the unifying power of music rather than explicit political statements. Yet, his very presence, leading an integrated and highly accomplished orchestra, was a potent statement in itself, particularly to audiences unfamiliar with the realities of American society. Ellington's art consistently affirmed black dignity and celebrated the richness of African American heritage. Pieces like Black, Brown and Beige, though initially met with mixed reviews, were ambitious attempts to tell the story of Black America through music, a profound act of cultural affirmation. He saw his music as a reflection of his people's journey, their struggles, their triumphs, and their enduring spirit. In every performance, every interview, and every interaction, Duke Ellington embodied a quiet yet formidable resistance to prejudice, allowing his extraordinary talent and impeccable character to speak volumes, leaving an indelible mark as an icon who used his art to uplift, educate, and inspire on a global scale. The monumental contributions of Duke Ellington extend far beyond the concert hall, resonating deeply within academic and educational spheres across the globe. His legacy is meticulously preserved and actively explored in conservatories, universities, and scholarly institutions, where his compositions are dissected, analysed, and celebrated as cornerstones of 20th century music. In music conservatories, students of jazz and classical traditions alike engage with Ellington's scores. They study his innovative orchestration, his unique harmonic voicings, and his mastery of form. Aspiring composers learn from his ability to craft complex narratives within a musical framework, while instrumentalists delve into the intricate nuances of his arrangements, understanding how each part contributes to the collective sound. The Ellingtonian approach to the big band, where individual voices are highlighted within a cohesive ensemble, remains a foundational model for contemporary large ensemble writing. Universities around the world offer courses dedicated exclusively to Ellington's life and work, or integrate his music into broader studies of American music history, African American studies, and cultural theory. These academic explorations delve into the social and historical context that shaped his art, examining his role as a cultural figure, a band leader, and a composer who continually pushed the boundaries of musical expression. Scholars analyze his extended works, his sacred concerts, and his collaborations, uncovering layers of meaning and intent that continue to inspire new interpretations. A vast body of scholarship has emerged over the decades, dedicated to illuminating every facet of Ellington's existence. Biographers meticulously chronicle his extensive career, drawing from archival materials, interviews, and his own writings to paint comprehensive portraits of the man and his music. Musicologists scrutinize his compositional techniques, often unearthing previously unknown aspects of his creative process. The study of his vast archive, including manuscripts, recordings, and personal papers housed in institutions like the Smithsonian, provides an inexhaustible resource for ongoing research. Moreover, the pedagogical impact of Ellington's work is evident in the numerous educational programs and workshops that focus on improvisational techniques and ensemble playing within the jazz idiom. His compositions, with their clear melodic lines and sophisticated harmonic structures, serve as invaluable teaching tools guiding students through the intricacies of jazz improvisation and the art of collective music making. The enduring presence of his music in educational curricula ensures that future generations of musicians and scholars will continue to engage with his profound artistic vision. This sustained academic engagement underscores the timeless relevance of Duke Ellington. His work is not merely a historical artifact, it is a living, breathing testament to creative genius, offering endless avenues for study, interpretation, and performance, thereby cementing his place as an indispensable figure in the annals of global music education and scholarship. The artistic vision of Duke Ellington, while deeply rooted in jazz, possessed a universality that allowed its influence to permeate far beyond the boundaries of that genre, touching the creative sensibilities of musicians across a diverse spectrum of styles. His innovative compositional techniques and his distinctive musical language provided inspiration for artists in classical music, popular music, and various contemporary forms, demonstrating the expansive reach of his genius. In the realm of classical music, composers and orchestrators observed Ellington's sophisticated use of tone colour and his mastery of instrumental textures. His ability to blend and contrast timbres within his orchestra, treating each section and even individual instruments as distinct voices, resonated with classical approaches to orchestration. Elements of his harmonic language, which often employed rich, extended chords and unexpected progressions, found echoes in modern classical works, particularly those exploring American idioms. Composers like Igor Stravinsky openly admired Ellington, recognizing the profound originality and structural integrity of his compositions. The very notion of jazz as a serious art form, capable of complex emotional expression and intellectual depth, was largely affirmed through Ellington's elevated compositional output, paving the way for further cross-pollination between jazz and classical traditions. Popular music, too, absorbed aspects of Ellington's artistry. His melodic ingenuity produced countless memorable themes that became enduring standards, interpreted by vocalists and instrumentalists across generations. While his own music often transcended simple pop structures, the elegance and catchiness of his melodies, combined with the rhythmic vitality of his arrangements, provided a sophisticated blueprint that influenced songwriters and arrangers in more commercial genres. The sophisticated swing and rhythmic propulsion he perfected became a foundational element for much of the popular music that followed, even as styles evolved. Furthermore, his pioneering spirit in challenging musical conventions and his unwavering commitment to artistic excellence inspired countless musicians to explore their own creative boundaries. Artists in rhythm and blues, soul, and even some rock musicians, while not directly replicating his style, often drew inspiration from his concept of ensemble sound, his approach to improvisation, and his unwavering pursuit of a unique artistic voice. The idea of an artist leading a cohesive, evolving musical unit, constantly experimenting and refining its sound, is a direct legacy of Ellington's profound impact. And the breadth of his influence underscores that Ellington was not merely a jazz musician. He was a singular musical architect whose innovations transcended categorization, offering a rich tapestry of ideas that continue to inspire and shape the global soundscape. His artistic vision remains a testament to the power of music to bridge divides and foster universal appreciation for creative mastery. Duke Ellington, the public figure, was a carefully constructed persona, a man of impeccable style, eloquent speech, and an almost regal bearing. He cultivated an air of mystique, a certain distance that both fascinated and intrigued audiences and interviewers alike. This public image, often referred to as the Duke, was not merely a superficial veneer but an integral part of his artistic presentation and his broader mission. It served to elevate not only himself but also the music he created and the culture he represented, projecting dignity and sophistication in an era often marked by prejudice. He rarely revealed inner turmoil or personal struggles in public, maintaining a composed and gracious demeanour even amidst the relentless pressures of touring, composing, and leading a demanding orchestra for decades. His responses to questions were often witty, charming and evasive, deflecting direct inquiries about his private life with philosophical pronouncements or humorous anecdotes. This deliberate cultivation of an enigmatic quality contributed significantly to his legend, making him an enduring icon whose appeal transcended fleeting musical trends. The mystique he projected became inseparable from the grand artistry he delivered, creating a cohesive and powerful impression. Yet beneath this polished exterior resided a man of profound complexity and deep humanity. The private Edward Kennedy Ellington, known to his closest friends, family, and a few trusted colleagues, was a person of immense generosity, loyalty, and sensitivity. He was a devoted, if often absent, father, and a fiercely loyal leader to his musicians, often acting as a benevolent patriarch who cared for their well-being. His personal relationships, though sometimes complicated, were marked by deep affection and a quiet commitment. He possessed an insatiable curiosity, constantly reading, observing, and absorbing the world around him, which then filtered into his compositions. His private moments were often spent at the piano, exploring new harmonies, or in quiet reflection, wrestling with the vast musical ideas that constantly flowed through his mind. While publicly he was the suave maestro, privately he was the tireless artisan, driven by an unyielding creative imperative. The contrast between the public Duke and the private Ellington highlights the dual nature of many great artists. The public persona served as necessary shield and a powerful tool for navigating the world, allowing the profound artistic work to flourish. The private man, with his vulnerabilities and complexities, was the wellspring from which that extraordinary artistry ultimately emerged. Understanding this duality allows for a more complete appreciation of the man who became one of the most significant figures in 20th century music, recognizing both the carefully crafted legend and the deeply human heart that beat beneath it. Was the enduring appeal of Duke Ellington's music decades after his passing lies in its remarkable timelessness. It continues to resonate with audiences across generations and cultures, a testament to its profound emotional depth, its melodic beauty, and its unyielding rhythmic vitality. This sustained connection is not accidental, but is woven into the very fabric of his compositional approach. Ellington possessed an innate understanding of the human condition, which he translated into sound. His melodies, whether soaring and romantic or melancholic and introspective, touch upon universal feelings. There is a palpable sense of joy in pieces like Take the A Train, a sophisticated urban cool in Satin Doll, and a poignant longing in Mood Indigo. These emotional landscapes are readily accessible, yet inviting listeners into a shared experience, regardless of their background or the era in which they live. The emotional honesty embedded within his orchestrations ensures that the music never feels dated or confined to a specific historical moment. Beyond its emotional resonance, the sheer melodic beauty of Ellington's work is a primary reason for its lasting power. He was a master of crafting memorable tunes, melodies that linger in the mind long after the final note fades. His themes are often deceptively simple, yet they possess an elegance and sophistication that allows for endless interpretation and improvisation. This combination of immediate appeal and underlying complexity ensures that his music rewards repeated listening, continually revealing new layers of artistry. The harmonic richness and unique voicings he employed contribute to this beauty, creating textures that are both lush and distinctively Ellingtonian. Furthermore, the rhythmic vitality inherent in his compositions ensures their perpetual relevance. Rooted deeply in the pulsations of jazz, Ellington's music possesses an irresistible swing and an infectious groove. Even in his more contemplative or extended works, there is an underlying rhythmic drive that compels movement and engagement. This rhythmic ingenuity, often reflecting the diverse personalities of his band members, gives his music a dynamic quality that prevents it from ever sounding static. It speaks to the fundamental human inclination towards rhythm, making his sound feel alive and contemporary, even when heard through recordings from many decades ago. Ellington's compositions also exhibit a remarkable adaptability. They have been reinterpreted and performed in countless styles, from classical arrangements to contemporary jazz fusion, proving their fundamental structural integrity and their capacity to inspire new creative expressions. This ability to transcend its original context and speak to new generations of musicians and listeners is a hallmark of truly great art. The timelessness of his music, therefore, is not merely a matter of historical preservation, but a living, breathing testament to his genius, a melodic, rhythmic, and emotionally resonant legacy that continues to enrich the global soundscape. Duke Ellington's profound artistic philosophy found its most succinct expression in his famous phrase, "beyond category." This declaration was more than a mere marketing slogan. It encapsulated his fundamental refusal to be confined by limiting labels and underscored his steadfast belief in the boundless potential of music as a universal language. For Ellington, music was not to be pigeonholed into genres like jazz, classical, or popular, but rather experienced as a singular, expressive force. This philosophy emerged from a lifetime of pushing boundaries. From his earliest compositions, Ellington displayed an inclination to draw from diverse sources, weaving together elements of blues, spirituals, ragtime, and European classical traditions. He saw no inherent hierarchy in these forms, only different colours and textures available to the composer's palette. To place his work solely within the confines of jazz, while accurate in its foundational spirit, Saussure failed to account for the symphonic scope of his longer suites, the operatic ambitions of his stage works, or the sophisticated harmonic progressions that often rivaled those found in the concert hall. Ellington understood that labels, while convenient for critics and marketers, could inadvertently diminish the breadth and depth of artistic expression. By insisting that his music was beyond category, he was asserting its inherent value, independent of prevailing classifications. He sought to elevate the perception of Black American musical forms, demonstrating their capacity for complexity, beauty, and intellectual rigor equal to any other musical tradition. This was a quiet yet powerful act of artistic self-determination and cultural affirmation. His belief in music as a universal language stemmed from this expansive view. Ellington toured the world extensively, observing how his compositions resonated with audiences from vastly different cultural backgrounds. He recognized that the emotional content, the rhythmic pulse, and the melodic invention of his work transcended linguistic and cultural barriers. Music, in his view, possessed an inherent power to communicate directly to the human spirit, fostering understanding and connection where words might fail. This conviction informed his collaborative spirit and his willingness to experiment. He continually sought new sounds, new instrumental combinations, and new narrative possibilities within his musical framework. His compositions often featured individual soloists as distinct voices within a larger tapestry, much like characters in a drama, each contributing to a universal story. The idea of beyond category was thus not just about his music, but about a broader vision for art itself, an art that is inclusive, expansive, and always striving for new horizons, unfettered by predetermined definitions. It remains a guiding principle for understanding the unique and enduring legacy of Duke Ellington. The long and winding journey through the life of Duke Ellington reveals not merely a musician, but a force of nature, a cultural architect whose influence continues to resonate with quiet power. From the early days in Washington, D.C. through the glittering Cotton Club era, the challenging war years, the triumphant resurgence, and the relentless global tours of his later decades, Ellington remained a figure of unwavering dedication to his art. His life was, in essence, a sustained and evolving symphony, with each phase adding new movements, new textures, and deeper harmonic richness to the whole. His monumental impact on music is evident not just in the sheer volume of his output, thousands of compositions and recordings, but in the profound originality of his sound. He forged a distinctive orchestral voice that was unmistakably his own, blending the raw energy of the blues with the sophisticated structures of European classical music, all filtered through the improvisational spirit of jazz. He elevated the individual musician within the collective, crafting intricate arrangements that showcased the unique talents of his sidemen, transforming them into an integral part of his compositional tapestry. This collaborative genius created a body of work that remains endlessly fascinating, a perpetual source of study and inspiration for generations of artists. Beyond the notes and rhythms, Ellington's life carried a deeper cultural significance. He was a dignified ambassador for Black American culture on a global stage, subtly but powerfully challenging racial prejudices through the sheer excellence and universal appeal of his art. He presented a vision of black artistry that was sophisticated, innovative, and deeply human, expanding perceptions and forging connections across divides. His relentless pursuit of artistic integrity, his refusal to be confined by labels, and his belief in music as a universal language left an indelible mark not only on jazz, but on the broader landscape of 20th century culture. Even as his health declined in his final years, his creative spirit remained undimmed, a testament to an inner drive that transcended physical limitations. He continued to compose, perform, and inspire, leaving behind a legacy that is both vast and intimately personal. The Duke's enduring symphony, a tapestry woven from melody, rhythm, innovation, and unwavering dignity, continues to play on, a permanent imprint on the soul of music, and a quiet reminder of the profound power of a life lived in devotion to art. His was a singular journey, culminating in a quiet awe for the sheer scope of his genius and the lasting beauty he bestowed upon the world.